All right. Conveners of the meetings, do you hear that?
Sounding out the message now.
Early.
Please continue in this fashion.
Bright and early.
Mapema.
Nasubui.
We will be discussing a lot today. There's madness that Raila and Ruto have woken up to 2 days after it happened. We'll be looking at that. And then also we have to look at what's happening in the continent. So something is happening in Mali, something is happening in Cameroon, something is happening in other parts of the continent. But at the same time, there is COVID-19. And this is a continent that had been tipped as the future of the world. So are all these things going to affect the Africa Rising narrative? We'll have a conversation around that. And also musings from a COVID-19 tested scientist. And this is the PS for in the State Department of Food, Crop Production and Agricultural Research. He's spoken to us before. He tested positive for COVID-19 and he's been blogging about it, shall we say. So he'll be sharing with us his experience of that. However, very many things that we need to talk about, but let's start where we always start, and this is with the COVID-19 numbers.
Sure thing. 271 new cases in Kenya yesterday. It seems that now somebody somewhere is applauding this and saying that there's a drop in the numbers, and likelihood of getting higher numbers is slim. This is according to some quarters. Kenya's case is now at 30,636, with 17,368 recoveries. And unfortunately now the number of deaths has risen to 487. Now this means that there are about 12,600 active COVID-19 cases in the country. And it's now, it seems to become, it has become a thing of reporting, and we seem to be living with COVID in Kenya.
Yep.
You know, it's business as usual. Things have gone back to normal, more or less, and people are trying to, you know, pick up with their businesses, pick up with their work. COVID, all right, you're here, but the work is going to continue. People are going to get on with their lives. But there's certain things that remain in place. Schools remain closed. Places of worship still have to make sure that they're keeping the numbers well within manageable levels.
Yeah.
And yes, the general population is still being asked to maintain those three things: social distance, hygiene, and the wearing of masks. So, I mean, it's still highly infectious. It's still there with us, but it seems like the threat and the fear that was resident a couple of months ago is dissipating.
And also, if you look at the data, so according to the data that was released yesterday, 271 new cases.
Yeah.
The positivity ratio appears to be dropping in terms of number of samples tested and those that are turning out positive.
Yeah.
So like you were saying yesterday, so we are in week 33, and since week 28, the ratio has been dropping. So in terms of number of samples tested and those that are turning positive, now is appearing like we're on that decline. Because it says that week 28, there was a 13% positivity ratio. That was the highest. 29, 11.8. Week 30, 12.6. Week 31, 11.9. Week 32, 10.8. And now week 33, 9.6% on the 33rd week now. So it's like we already reached our peak in August. Huh?
Yep.
Was it in August? No, actually, that was end of July. Yep.
It'll be interesting to see what the numbers are, though, then towards the tail end of this month, the next week or so.
Yeah.
How that would change.
Yep. It appears that that's what is happening. Okay. So it's no reason to slacken.
No, I don't think so. I think that would be the danger. That there's the danger there in that people, you know, would then say, all right, well, it seems that the cases are reducing. We seem to have managed this thing. So, you know, let's just get back to business
All
as
the
usual.
other factors are the variables that contribute to these figures we keep talking about in the data. Have they remained constant? For instance, when you're talking about the numbers of people being tested. Right?
No, there. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I'm saying that has not remained constant. the number of people now having been tested, like what Eric was saying, over the last couple of days has actually reduced.
Okay.
Yeah.
The number of people who are testing positive.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
samples keep varying. You know,
Yeah.
we've never had like
a constant number, like 6,000 every day.
Yeah.
2,000 today, 6,000 tomorrow, 5,000 the next day, 4,000, like that.
And then, do we know, for instance, that when these tests take place, whether it's in the private hospitals or in the government facilities, do we know that the reporting, we know there's a delay, yes, but is there consistency? You know, if it's delayed by 10 days and every 10 days you get the report, there'll be consistency and there'll be a follow-up. Maybe every 10 days, but 10 days on a daily basis is reported.
Right.
Is that a constant?
in terms of whether every facility that's testing is reporting,
Yes.
is sending the results to the government.
Yes, the delays being taken into account and everything else being taken into account. Because the delay doesn't mean that the testing is faulty. We just need to understand
Yep.
that when
This was taken 10 days ago,
yes,
this was taken 7 days
yes,
ago,
exactly. So when it's
on and
reported,
so forth.
yes, it's actually a reflection of the reality of what's actually happening.
I think the fact that there are only a few accredited testing facilities,
Yes.
then you can also say that it's highly likely that the information that goes to the Ministry of Health is consistent from those testing facilities.
What I have not been able to verify is whether the story that we talked about yesterday in the papers regarding Kemri receiving adequate funding to actually utilize the facilities that they have. Because given the delays and given the numbers, even the facilities that Kemri has will not be able to actually meet the threshold of what is required in terms of testing.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a need to expand that capacity.
That need has been there since January.
You know, it was different. You see, in January, the problem we had was that all the capacity that an institution like Cambridge had wasn't being fully utilized. Okay, now that had its own issues. Then the consistent issue has been with testing, just the numbers. Okay, what are our numbers? Have we hit 400,000?
Just over 400,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, 394.
Well, just under 400,000.
Yeah.
No, I think Nduh has a point. That was the report from yesterday. Today, it may have hit 400,000.
Maybe.
Perhaps.
By the time we're reporting today, it's possible that we'll have done
So yesterday
5,000
we're at
tests today.
No, I don't know. Yesterday was at 391. So now at 394, looking at about 3,000 tests or so that were done. And it's interesting because then when the tests were, there was one particular day when about 4,000 tests were done, and that was the day when they found 700 positive cases of those. So I mean, like what you're saying, CT, that number has never been constant for them to be a source of information through which then you can now make this case.
Very true. Very true. But of interest, you know, one of the things we've also been discussing with regards to COVID is the COVID fund, the 5 billion shillings that was dished out to the counties, yes. According to page 6 of the Business Daily, 4 counties got the biggest cut. And why they got the biggest cut was they have the biggest population in the country. This is Nairobi, Kakamega, Bungoma, and Nakuru.
Okay.
So why am I bringing this in? You see, if you look at the debate that is taking place in the Senate right now, okay, the one thing that needs to be looked at and looked at consistently and realistically is this issue of the population. Because every time we bring in the issue of the population, it is separated from other issues that are also considered when it comes to talking about the division of spoils. But that's a discussion for a later time in the course of the day.
All right.
Yes.
So around the world.
Okay, so let's look at some of these COVID numbers around the world. We're looking now at 22,306,538 cases. Still, 784,353 deaths and 15 million of those recovered. So we're looking at about 7 million cases, 6 million cases now around the world that are active. If we want to look at how things have changed yesterday, we saw in India 2,400,000 cases. Today in India, there are 2,766,626 cases. Over 300,000 cases of COVID reported yesterday. And inching very closely to 3 million, Brazil has 3.4 million, where the United States then has crossed the 5.5 million case mark. South Africa now at 592 from 589 yesterday. So there were 4,000 cases of COVID found in South Africa yesterday alone. The cases of death have increased by 1,000, now at 12,264. Mexico still continues to rise up there, 531,239. There are other countries that are higher in terms of cases than Mexico. However, the problem with Mexico is that they're the third actually, highest in the world in terms of deaths, with 57,774 deaths in Mexico. So the rate of death in Mexico for COVID is quite high, even though there are other countries with a higher positive case load. Okay, which other countries are sticking out at us here? Yes, the South American and Central American countries continue to register higher cases of COVID, but where there's still cause for concern, as far as they're concerned, is Australia, where they thought that things were, getting to a head, as it were, but not quite, with 216 cases having been recorded in the last 24 hours. Okay. I thought it would be interesting, for example, to look at countries where other things are happening, whereby they don't even have an opportunity to really think much about COVID. If we look at Mali, for example, where the coup d'etat is happening or happened yesterday, Mali has recorded 2,666 cases of COVID, with total number of deaths at 125. They have a population of 20 million people. But now, can you imagine what happens with any kind of COVID measures or response, anything out the window, done? I mean, nobody's even thinking about that now.
Ask yourself, the moment you have street protests in large numbers, it's not any different from all these holiday makers in Europe who decided to go to either Spain or France or whatever.
Yeah.
People just contravene these basic ABCs completely.
People are living their lives.
Yes, people are living their lives.
And they're saying COVID can also live its life if it wants.
If it wants.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's meet somewhere, say hello to one another, and then move on, right? It's just each of us is living their lives. 16 minutes after 6 o'clock, this is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the skies, the weather for this morning, and then we'll start to take a look at the big headlines of the day, starting with the big problem. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 14 degrees today. We're going to see highs of 22, coming down to a low of 14 today, and a chance of rain later on in the afternoon. Nakuru is mostly cloudy at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 22, and there's a chance of thunderstorms later, but that you're just going to have to wait and see if it actually happens. It's cloudy in Njeri at 14. The skies are bound to open up at some point. Highs of 20 and lows of 14. Likely to be a wet afternoon. It's clear skies in Eldoret at 13. We'll see highs of 20 and lows of 12 with thunderstorms also in the forecast. It's rain in the offing for Kisumu later with highs of 27 and lows of 19. Mostly cloudy conditions at the moment. Kakamega is cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 15. Mostly cloudy conditions in Mombasa will rule the day at 23. Currently, highs of 29 and lows of 22. It's mostly cloudy in Malindi as well. 24 degrees at the moment. Highs of 28 and lows of 23. It's cloudy conditions in Kampala this morning at 19. Highs of 26 and lows of 18 degrees with showers expected later. It'll be a clear day in Dar es Salaam at 21 currently. Highs of 31 and lows of 20. Johannesburg this morning is extremely cold at 1 degree, and it's not likely to get any warmer for most of the day. The sun will be out though, interestingly enough. Highs of 13 and lows of -2 in a very cold South African winter. And in Lagos, it's clear skies at 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 23 with a shower or two expected later on in the afternoon. Let's take a look into London, where at the moment it's cloudy at 17 degrees. There'll be some showers later at 19 the high and lows of 17. It's clear skies in Paris this morning, and when they wake up, it'll continue to be clear. However, there's a chance of rain later then with highs of 20 and lows of 11. All right, let's look at New York, where it's still Tuesday night. It's clear, however, at 29 degrees. We'll see highs of 30 and lows of 20.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
20 minutes after 6. Good morning, and thank you very much for choosing Spice FM this morning. Our live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. CT Muga, today's proverb.
Today's proverb.
Okay, it must be a good one.
Is there a Kiswahili version of that?
Well, why don't I say it and then let's see what the Kiswahili version is.
Oh, that wasn't the proverb.
No, that's a universal language.
Mzee akikohoa, kuna jambo.
Wow.
Yes. Si lazima awe anakohozi.
Oh, that's not the proverb either, huh?
No, it isn't. Because a man has injured your goat, you do not go out and kill his bull. Because a man has injured your goat, you do not go out and kill his bull.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
This isn't an eye for an eye. It's a face for an eye.
A goat for a cow. A bull.
Yeah, you've got to feel. I mean, it depends. If to me, the goat was the most valuable,
It
possession I
represents
had,
your sum total of wealth.
yes,
Yes.
I come for the biggest thing that you have as well.
Meaning I look for the equivalent in my eyes.
Yeah.
And since I don't have a cow, and the equivalent as far as I can see is that animal you have. Well, there are other meanings that can be attached to this same saying. Moderation. But we shall look at the various aspects of what the saying could possibly mean as we go on.
Right.
Yes.
If a man kills your goat,
Do not go out and
Do
kill.
not
No,
go on.
no, the man actually just injured your goat. Didn't even kill it.
then
Injured your goat.
Injured
Now,
your
You
goat.
don't go out and kill his
kill his bull.
Note, it isn't cow, bull.
Bull.
So you're talking about an animal that is considered very prized.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you got any version that you can think of in Swahili language or any other language in the country, please let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let's now take a look at the big headlines.
So,
Yeah.
Kenya among first countries to benefit from the first 300 shilling COVID-19 vaccine. Kenya is one of the countries listed among the 92 vulnerable nations that will benefit immediately a vaccine for COVID-19 is discovered. The move is spearheaded by the Gavi, which is the Global Vaccine Alliance, a Geneva-based conglomerate of private and public sectors, making coronavirus vaccine negotiations with its different manufacturers on behalf of vulnerable and poor countries. According to Gavi, a COVID-19 vaccine will cost no more than 300 shillings per dose. The list of the 92 eligible countries includes all economies with gross national income per capita under $4,000, plus other World Bank International Development Association eligible economies. Kenya was listed alongside countries like Cameroon, Nigeria, Zambia, Ghana, India, Egypt, Lesotho, Ethiopia, South Sudan, among others. We now have the framework in place to ensure that every economy, particularly the poorest nations, are not left behind in the race for a COVID-19 vaccine. And this is according to Dr. Seth Berkley, the CEO of Gavi, in a statement on their website. For Gavi, the goal is that by the end of 2021 to deliver 2 billion doses of the safe, effective vaccines to all participating countries, including the 92 listed eligible countries.
Okay. Okay.
So
we're talking about 2021.
Yeah.
By end of 2021.
Yes.
Then let's hope that thing is found this year.
We hope that the vaccine is at least the trials are completed and then it is vouched safe.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that was just a little bit of good news to start things off.
Okay, and some other good news on page 10 of the Standard. This headline says, Kenya's shining star wows the world.
Sorry, what now?
Kenya's who?
Shining star.
They're not shining.
Not according to the headline.
Okay.
From Lamu to the UN list of global real-life heroes, and this is a story of a lady called Umra Omar, who is said that she's one of the 19 heroes from 16 countries who will be recognized by the UN today for helping the poor in Lamu County access health services. So today is World Humanitarian Day, and special tribute this year is being paid to health workers who've gone above and beyond the call of duty to ensure that those around them can access medical care. So this lady called Umra Omar is one of the 19 heroes who will be recognized, and the recognition is well deserved, but Omar would not be basking in the spotlight if she had not made the momentous and life-changing decision 5 years ago to move back to her native Lamu, abandoning the cozy life that her job as a health communications consultant afforded her in New York City, USA. So she returned there and she's been working with the local community. Now she's been recognized by the UN today.
This is great.
Some good stuff, right?
Oh, it's actually excellent stuff. When you consider, you see, Lamu is one of those places that could arguably say they've been marginalized. One, geographically, it's massive.
Yep.
Doesn't have a very big population.
Yep.
So in terms of simply basic human needs that other counties take for granted, Lamu hasn't had them for the longest time.
True.
And the fact that Lamu comprises of many, many islands, some of whom are a conglomerate or a collection of islands, and that you have to get to them by sea, that complicates the matters even further.
more.
Yeah.
Yes.
People of Lamu, however, they appreciate and of course acknowledge the fact that they have been marginalized for a while. They are far-flung. The distance between Lamu and Mombasa is equivalent to the distance between Nairobi and Mombasa. You know, I got a story the other day of a certain pastor who passed away, a full gospel bishop in charge of the coast region based in Mpeketoni, Lamu. Last week, he needed oxygen, had contracted COVID, needed oxygen. Lamu has no ICU and has no ventilator in the ward. So the man needed to be transferred from Lamu. He was now being taken to Mombasa, where maybe he would access this. He died on his way, died in Kilifi.
But I have a problem with that because, I mean, we heard from, everybody across counties. We even heard from Senator Loy Tip Tip that everything was okay and they had the adequate resources and supplies that they needed to take care of everybody. So it goes beyond even the distance between Lamu and the next
No,
place.
that's the politician talking to us. We
I
should
mean-
have had that discussion with the people who are in charge of the health services in that county.
To tell us if it was
Yes.
actually the
That's-
case. It was
that's the
clear that it
governor.
wasn't.
Because, look, so in those 7 years that we've had devolution, Lamu is one of the counties that has been receiving money,
It has.
Yes.
because of the landmass
Yes.
and also the equalization fund.
Yes.
In this COVID period, this 5 billion shillings, Lamu received 13 million shillings just from that to go and sort out its health to deal with COVID.
I have to go back to the population.
Oxygen
Yes. It's
in
not.
Mpeketoni, 0. And this, we are not talking about, just an ordinary villager. This is a well-known leader of a community.
Not only that, you do not need COVID in order to need oxygen. It's
something
something
that
that
you
should be
should
available in a
have.
hospital,
In a
not
hospital.
even an
medical
ICU.
facility, in a
in
medical
facility.
facility. Yeah.
Yes.
You should have it anyway.
So here we are. We're talking about, marginalization, all these things.
And remember that 13 million that it got, of course, is one of the counties that got the 13 million because it has a population of something like 144,000. Okay. Compared to counties that have millions,
Yep.
a million plus.
Yep.
So the
Remember, I think it's about the same amount of money that Machakos received. I think Machakos actually received when Dr. Alfred Mutua spoke to us. He told us they
he
received.
received more.
They,
Received 100 and something.
oh, yeah, it's 100 and something million, yes.
108 million.
100 and, yeah, actually, yeah.
it was
But
100 million.
remember, Dr. Alfred Mutua, according to what he told us, he has given health priority. 70%, according to him, of his budget focus on health. He said he knows other sectors will suffer, but he also understands the need to keep his people healthy. Yes. So, you are spot on when you talk about the leadership. But what the senator for that particular region has said is in keeping with what political leaders around the country have been saying. They're ready.
The counties are ready.
Ready,
They're
ready,
prepared.
ready.
They've done quite a lot.
But what is it? Is it a death of conscience that allows you to say that, we're ready and we have everything that we need, and you know very well that you do not? Then we see a case like this where somebody dies.
Readiness is relative. If somebody's just looking at how many beds do you have beds that are unoccupied?
And then
that
somebody
will be
focuses
occupied?
and says, how many schools do we have? How many boarding schools do we have? How many beds are in those boarding schools? Yes, we have beds.
So on
It was
paper,
Lamu where
they're
they
ready.
said it was Lamu where they had an infrastructure
It was-
problem.
it was
Tana
Tana River.
River.
It was Tana River, right?
Neighboring county.
Neighboring county, whereby they had everything except the
They didn't know
buildings
where.
for the beds.
They were going to take the beds.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's annoying.
It is. It's more than annoying. So,
But what I also find peculiar about this, and this is going to probably tie in with other headlines that we've had, must someone who holds a high position of that nature die
In
for
order
us
for
to,
them
to understand? Must high-ranking politicians be arrested for us to understand that people have been arrested before these three were arrested, and they're being arrested every day? We even had a homeless man being shot. His crime seemed to have been he was homeless. It's not the only one. I'm simply pinpointing what reached the media. On a daily basis, there are always reports of the way and the manner in which the police go about their business. And we've raised this question. Do we equip our policemen adequately to actually, and I say equip, not to give them guns and give them boots. Do we train them? Do we give them the sufficient wherewithal to carry out the mandate that we expect of them?
Absolutely not. Clearly. Not. We'll be discussing that also in great detail as we proceed with these conversations. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we come back and look at more headlines this morning. Good morning.
Traffic.
Hey guys, so let's see what's going on the streets this morning, and it's actually quite smooth. Mombasa Road, all the way from Lolongo down, then towards Bellevue, and even further down, it's actually looking quite good. We don't have much problems there. So far, so good. Coming off Thika Road as well, Mambo ni teke teke is what I'm being told. So I guess that means that it's flowing very smoothly, and we'll take it for that. Coming off Jogo Road, there's a little slight bit of traffic right around the City Stadium roundabout as you head then towards industrial area on your left, or then head right towards the CBD, but that should be fine. So right now, not much in terms of traffic rumblings. We do know, however, that Thika Road is going to be closed at night every day this week. So likely until about 4 in the morning. So if you were using the road before 4, you can't do that. The road opens at 4:30 every day for the next couple of days. So we're going to see heightened levels of traffic on Thika Road, I am sure. We'll see more details as we go along. Spice of MKE, that's how you can get in touch with us. Let us know what you see and let's keep it moving this Wednesday morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Right, this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have Nduh Okoh, CT Muga, and Eric Latiff. We are looking at the big stories that have been reported in the papers this morning. Do we go into this one? The madness story?
Go.
Stop the madness, says Raila and Ruto. Say Raila and Ruto. ODM leader and the deputy president have condemned the senator's arrest. Raila warning that attacks are clawing back on democratic gains and urging restraint. Ruto criticizing the use of the force to intimidate and blackmail leaders. And this, the two gentlemen released statements yesterday. Well, Raila released a statement, Ruto tweeted, and were basically just condemning the action that happened more than 30 hours prior. So Raila Odinga says that the state needs to pull back and abandon actions that take away the gains made on our path to democratization. The warlords need to stop beating the drums of war or financing the divisive rhetoric, and legislators need to search their souls in all honesty and put public good above private gain. This is the leader of ODM. The Deputy President of the Republic says the abuse of police and criminal justice to bully citizens, threaten and intimidate leaders, and now blackmail Senate is wrong. Very wrong. It's not the reason why millions woke up early to vote for us.
It's really very difficult to blackmail someone unless there's something to blackmail you for. Like you can't blackmail someone for being alive. But, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
You can't blackmail them for being tall or not so tall. Should I say vertically challenged? You cannot. But you can, if there's something that you feel they know, they've done, that may not do very well in the scrutiny of the glaring light.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I even wonder how that term blackmail came in. Now, having said that, it is correct that they should condemn it. But must it be senators?
You should condemn it across the board.
Right from the time COVID began, did we not hear of, how many cases did we hear of people being arrested? How many? I mean, there were so many every other day. And the question you asked, again, this was highlighted with the arrest of the senator for Kakamega, who refused to go into the cell. He says, no, he's not. He'd rather spend the night in the cold because that cell is full of people.
We don't know if they've fumigated the cell. We don't know if they're tested positive.
He said he has no clue.
We don't know if the place has been sanitized. So
Yes.
because of that, we're not going in. Rather sleep outside in the cold. All right. I hear what you're saying, CT, and it's very interesting because how many people have been brutalized by police in the last 4 months? How many people have been arrested for maybe being out looking for medicine late at night and they had a valid reason to be on the road? You understand there's a curfew, but you still venture out because somebody needs something at home, right? I'm not even talking about those who are drinking or doing whatever needed to for some kind of entertainment. Those who actually needed to be out, arrested maybe if you look at it, with no just cause. To see leaders then who really care about individuals, I say you should have raised your voice in condemnation at that point. It's not about your kin, because that's it. Leaders just like you make up a minutest percentage of the people for whom you're supposed to be governing or leading. There should have been uproar when these things were happening to the common man. There should be uproar when people have to die in Lamu because they don't have ventilators or they don't have oxygen. But then 3 people are arrested, as unjust as it may have been, because they're senators. Then we hear all this loud noise. loud noise should be there constantly, especially for the people.
Not only that, there are other things that have bedeviled us in the not too distant past. We've had issues with KEMSA. We've had issues with Afia House. And why these are issues is because whatever is being spoken of affects the lives of very many Kenyans in the millions. These are things that concern. These are three people. Yes, they represent an interesting demographic number, but they are three. And they were let go of. The point is, if this is being used to highlight what we keep referring to as police brutality, I'm raising the question and asking the things that they were accused of. If we just move aside that they're Senate, we just put aside the fact that these are senators, put aside the fact that we have issues within the Senate that have raised some very heated debate and ask, just pause. These things that are being said, which seem a bit frivolous, are they really frivolous? In terms of the law, if indeed what is being said was true, is it something that could get you arrested? I have to ask that question. The timing and everything, when you throw it in, now it becomes a totally different matter. But if I were just to sort of like single out these issues and say, if you were an ordinary citizen and there was a group of you, you were in a group, you're chatting, you didn't have face masks, you're not keeping, what does our law say? You can be arrested. You're contravening certain protocols that have been there.
Yeah.
If, again, you as an ordinary citizen, the KRA come to you and say there are taxes that you should have paid and you haven't paid them, they have every right to take certain action. They are allowed to take certain action. The action may be taken. The question we should raise is it legal? Is it the right action to take? Again, we have removed the element of the debate in the Senate in this particular issue.
And your status in society.
Yes, exactly. Remove it and ask. If this was happening, if a Mwananchi was accused of any of these things, where would that one Mwananchi be today?
Isn't that the question?
Yeah. Is that legitimate cause for police to take action or even to start investigations or to invite you to come and record a statement over any of these matters? Is it completely out of the ordinary that a police officer would ask you to come and record a statement because they have information that you participated in an oath?
And what was the oath? Is it just a cultural activity that you people engage in from time to time?
So can you be blamed? For taking part?
Fact-finding mission.
Yeah,
guys. But when I look at this headline, when I saw this statement by Raila Odinga yesterday and the tweet by the Deputy President yesterday, it was yesterday in the afternoon. The three gentlemen were arrested on Sunday night. Okay, so let's call it Monday morning. Okay, so this happened Sunday night. By Monday morning, by the time we were even going on air, it was clear that these gentlemen have been arrested because the fellow legislators had been tweeting about it all night. It was covered in the media in the night, live from those locations when they were being arrested, right? In the Senate on Monday morning, there was uproar because senators were raising the issue of these arrests. So by that time, even if we say that Raila had slept early, by Monday morning, 10 a.m., he must have been told by somebody, this is what happened last night. The Deputy President, by Monday morning, even if we say that, he's been kept so much in the dark, he doesn't know anything that happens, so he just goes to sleep and he wakes up. By Monday morning, he has read the tweets, he has read newspapers, he has watched the news, he has known that something happened last night. They didn't speak. They did not speak the entire Monday. They wait until Tuesday in the afternoon, after the people have been taken all the way to Samburu, to Bomet, to Busia, not Busia,
Mumias. As you think of Mumias.
Mumias, right? They've been taken to all those places. They have, the DPP has taken action and said, no, I'm not going to charge these people. That's when these top leaders of the country are speaking out. I call BS. And I say there's absolutely no way you can tell me that Raila Odinga did not know that police are at the homes of these three gentlemen on Sunday night. There's absolutely no way you can convince me that Raila Odinga did not have any means of stopping that arrest if he really felt that this is clawing back on our democratic gains, path to democratization.
Or at the least speaking out.
He could have called the president that night. He has a direct line to the president. He could have called the president and told the president, you know what, my brother, what is happening here is not going to look good. Especially now that I'm a brother in handshake, it's not going to look good in our path to democratization, in our path to seeking peace, in our path to holding this country together. Please, ask these officers to stop. If indeed he called the president, then his statement should be saying, I heard about this on Sunday night. I called President Kenyatta, and this is what President Kenyatta told me. He told me, just shut up. Or
We'll continue.
We know what we are doing. Or the president told me, okay, it's okay, but let the police do their work. He should be telling us what action he took when he heard about this on Sunday night. Similar thing to the deputy president. You can't just wake up. No, not wake up. Wake up, sleep, wake up, spend a day, and then in the afternoon, on Tuesday afternoon, you're sending a statement saying, you know what, this is not the reason why millions woke up early to vote for us. You could have tweeted this on Monday morning. Why didn't they tweet this on Monday morning? Why didn't they issue the statements on Monday morning? This is complete BS. This is playing with our minds. They are absolutely not intentional in anything that they're saying here. Raila, Ruto, this is playing us.
I can see the reason why you have your knickers in a twist this morning, right? I can understand. So are you saying that this is just a PR stint?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is the most absolute balderdash you can ever come across. This one. This one. Raila Odinga telling us that, this is the state needs to pull back and abandon actions that take away the gains made on our path to democratization. You're telling the state, after it has already done this, after it has taken somebody from Kitengela all the way to Mumias, the man has spent his day in police custody. The man has been
slept outside.
And this is the time when you're telling us that this is taking us back to
everything that you've said
nothing.
Presents an interesting perspective and a narrative. But what if indeed everything that you're saying ought to have taken place did take place?
And then
that conversation was had.
Right.
There's the little detail, in that there are certain conversations you cannot repeat in public. We all know this. You may have had the conversation, but you're certainly not going to come out and say.
It's true. So what you should do, that statement should read something different. It should indicate that you have taken action. It should indicate that given the position that you hold right now in this government as the leader of ODM that has shaken hands with the president, given the position that you hold in this country as the deputy president who has taken a constitutional oath of office, given the position that you have, this is the action that you took, and this is why now you're sitting back and saying, you know what, no, this should stop. What I'm seeing here, these are crocodile tears. The biggest crocodile in the Mara River, shedding tears for a wildebeest that was devoured by the next crocodile there as it was crossing that river. And this big crocodile here is shedding tears and saying, it has been eaten. And yet you're waiting for your own wildebeest to come so that you can do the same. P.S. Give us another.
So what you're saying is that what we're being treated to is just another version of another episode of the drama.
Oh, yes.
That we have been seeing in the Senate.
This is just taking us
The drama continues.
Oh, so let's talk about airports. Let's move from Western, from Samburu. Let's just go to Mombasa, where the headquarters of the Kenya Ports Authority are. Kenya Ports Authority has operations around the country, but let's now talk about this information portal that they have. Captain Cargo, kpa.co.ke/Captain KARGO. And, Captain Cargo is this portal where you can go in and find simplified steps just for you to understand. If I am dealing with KPA in any of its facilities, let's say you're exporting, you're importing, and you basically need your goods cleared at any port, either at the port of Mombasa or any of the ports in the coast or the Kisumu port or any of the inland container depots. What is the procedure?
Okay, so
what are the words?
Normally this wouldn't have taken this long, but CT is exporting his pineapples to the UK, and we got to the point yesterday whereby the truck had arrived at the entry gate, and CT was already given his position slip. What is called your position slip, and you've gotten all your things in order, right? So we're looking at exports, and we're going to finish that off today and look at imports and what Captain Cargo then allows you to do and make it very seamless and easy for you to actually get your goods in and out of the country. So now your truck enters the port and proceeds to the X-ray scanning by KRA to make sure that, it's just pineapples you're carrying, CT. And then the truck goes to the KPA, what is called the stacking area, and the export cargo is offloaded. So your stuff leaves the truck and goes off onto the vessel. The export cargo is then loaded onto the ship, and the ship sails then from the port. And your pineapples are happily and sweetly making their way to the UK.
How long will it take?
Well, it depends on the vessel.
Does the port tell you?
The port... Well, I'm sure they give you a time period, maximum time period.
This is
Yes,
a shipper,
okay,
basically, who should tell you, though.
Yes, your shipper will give you all of this
it's to
information.
tell you. So now that we have the bill of lading,
Ooh, yes.
this is
Say it again.
We have the bill of the bill.
lading,
Yes.
lading, loading,
Lading.
laden.
Okay.
Bill.
So we're going to be looking today then at what you want. What do you want to import, sir, from the UK?
Well, clearly I cannot import Brexit. So what?
Well, you've made this sweet deal, and it's summer in the UK, and everybody's enjoying their sweet pineapple.
Yes.
So maybe you want to bring some things in, and we'll see how seamless it is to import those.
Yes, we will, won't we?
All right. kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo, and cargo is KARGO. 11 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a break. We'll come back and take a look at other headlines this morning.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
City, what do you have?
Well, what I'm looking at is on the Business Daily, ex-Nakumatt CEO loses 2 billion Kenyan shillings assets to lender.
Yeah?
The Bank of Africa have decided and determined that they are now going to auction Mr. Atul Shah's, him and his family's
Personal belongings, personal assets.
personal assets worth 2 billion shillings. They seized them and they headed in that particular direction. The reason is simply this: the money was owed, they had lent the money. And remember, Nakumatt didn't go under yesterday. Nakumatt went under quite a while back. And so this debate has been going on for some time. And the bank simply wanted to get its money back. And it looked, and it looked, and it realized this is a gentleman who was in charge. And the company may have gone bust. He hasn't gone bust. He has assets. Remember, in the papers early this week, there were, and sometimes last week, there was mention that this particular gentleman had been ferrying some of his money out of the country. But these are stories we hear all the time. There was nothing to, it was a story. There was nothing that actually verified it. But here he is now losing assets. Why this story for me is important is this. It's important because individuals who are at the helm of the decision-making process in organizations are being brought to account for the things that have happened.
Yeah.
So there's no escaping. A similar story to this one was again in the Business Daily regarding a trend that Kenyans had of declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, that's what they did, because once you are declared bankrupt, you could...
Nobody can touch you.
No, you could sort of like ferry your money to relatives and what have you. They wouldn't touch you. Then the laws changed. Just that. The laws changed.
So now it's not possible for you to play these games.
No, it's a very lengthy process before you can actually even go and declare. And you realize it is not even in your interest to go and declare bankruptcy.
And the law places personal and direct responsibility on directors of companies. So it's not just the company that is a corporate entity, but now when company gets into problems, the directors are personally liable for the mess.
If you look at what Nakumatt is reported to owe, it's a total of 38 billion Kenyan shillings to banks and suppliers.
Yeah.
Diamond Trust Bank 3.6 billion, KCB 1.7 billion, Standard 0.81, others B 0.15, UBA 0.13, GT Bank 0.1, suppliers and landlords 31.08.
Now let's talk about the suppliers. So what's the term for such people? Is it debtors or creditors? With reference to Nakumatt. Nakumatt's who? Nakumatt's
The creditors.
Creditors.
The ones who gave Nakumatt credit.
all right.
Yes.
So Nakumatt's creditors, especially the small people. You know, you
There
can
are many.
imagine there's somebody who just went and found an avenue, got into Nakumatt, was able to place their goods on the Nakumatt's shelves, and then Nakumatt goes bust with all your cash. And this is, you're a small SME. This is where you're starting your business. What happens to those? You see, bank can start attaching.
Not only attaching.
How do you
Banks
help
tend to
them?
they tend to insure some of these loans that
Yeah.
they give out. But the real look, they owe 38 billion. The banks and all the other fellows on these institutions, so to speak,
Yeah.
are actually owed the equivalent of just 7 billion.
Yeah.
The suppliers,
Suppliers, 30.
31.08.
And it would seem that they're in a rough spot because really, like we said before, Nakumatt was a rental company. So you bring your goods with the agreement that, you'd be paid when they sell. It
Yep.
was not a matter of you deliver and then we pay you after 30 days. No. With Nakumatt specifically, it was you deliver your goods when we sell, then we will pay you.
Still after 90
Yes.
days.
You know that Nakumatt model was something worth studying and considering because it took retailing to its nth. They did not own anything.
Even the shelves within the markets on
Were
which they
leased.
sold on were leased. The carts, the shopping carts were leased.
Even the telling machines and what have you.
They owned nothing.
Yes.
So how do you get that such people to be paid? How do
That
they
is
get
that is
such 1
why
billion?
the bank is now going. If they're going for a tool share, they'll go for the other directors as well. If the money isn't paid, if they don't feel the money is paid, the people who are responsible for policy and making decisions, they will go after them.
The pain, though, is like I'm saying, is for those small people. The suppliers. You have the big suppliers, and then you've got the medium and the small suppliers.
Yeah, imagine those
The
who
medium
kept
and
producing.
small suppliers have basically gone under, shut their business because their business went under with Nakumatt, and then they will wait for very many years before they can receive anything back, so they can restart
If
their
they do.
businesses if they do.
Actually, the closure of Nakumatt meant many businesses also closed.
Yep.
Many livelihoods were also lost.
Yeah.
Because the people who supplied directly, the people who supplied the supplier, and so the understanding would have been the same. But what made Nakumatt so attractive was that over the years, Nakumatt had actually lived up to the promise. It was a good entity to do business with. But if you look at, again, the stories surrounding Nakumatt, you get the impression that Nakumatt had their own pyramid scheme. When one particular part of that particular, a cog in that wheel sort of like tilted or moved or shifted, the whole thing now started snowballing.
That's it.
And you also get the impression that even the expansion was not that it was needed, but it was part of the game to give the impression that they were actually growing and becoming more and more profitable. Because you can't move from being this company that is doing what it's doing and the model that you have, and then suddenly going bust. How?
It's crazy.
How?
It's crazy.
No, it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You see, there are businesses we understand. For instance, when they tell you, if you look at the website and they tell you some of these businesses that deal with high-end goods are actually going bust. Well, with COVID, there's no money to buy the sort of things that you have.
Yep.
And if that's what you rely on for your for the existence of your company, of course you're going to have a problem. Nakumat had gone to a point where they did not need to spend a cent to get things. It is you who queued to supply them with things. And they paid you when they sold it.
Yep.
So now tell me, how do you go bust?
This is a story that it's intriguing, and I hope that at some point it shall really come to light what exactly happened. What happened to this retailer, and what happened to the many people who supplied and who are depending on this, even people who are employed by this giant supermarket chain. Coming to the top of the hour, remind us today's Proverb City as we look at whether we can get any Swahili equivalent of this one.
Well, today's, because a man has injured your goat, do not go out and kill his bull.
Because a man has injured your goat,
Yes.
do not go out and kill his bull.
No.
Okay.
So you're gonna rescind your decision to
Okay.
kill somebody's bull, Eric?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hey, you injure my goat, my friend.
And that's the only...
Come knowing. Come knowing.
Your bull is gone.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Anyway, you have any semblance of a Swahili translation to this, please let us know. Tweet us on SpiceFMKE, at SpiceFMKE. Good morning. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
This Wednesday morning, things are looking pretty good on most of the roads. Kangunda Road flowing very smoothly this morning and not much of an issue. We looked earlier on at Jogo Road where going towards the CBD, there was a bit of a hold up right around the City Stadium roundabout. But that's not too terrible now as we see it. Getting into town should not be a problem. Mombasa Road also looks very, very good. So we're going to look at Thika Road where we gave that information about it being closed today. It's actually going to be closed from Friday. There was a bit of construction that was happening on the road last night, but the road is actually open. Will not be closed till Friday, but then will be closed for 5 days consecutively between 9:30 and 4:30 a.m. So you need to plan ahead for that. If you don't need to use that road, then don't, because the traffic in the mornings from those 5 days will be epic, I am sure. All right, coming off of Langata Road and Westlands, as well as Gong Road, actually looks pretty good. It's going to be a good Wednesday morning, I predict. Yes, I do. Let us know in case you do run into a jam. SpiceFMKE on Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
2 minutes after
The
7
only
o'clock.
way-
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room right here. Spice FM and KTN Home for the next 2 hours as well. And also on www.spicefm.co.ke. So we've received a tweet here from Kamurket, or is it Kamarket? He says, Sweetie Muga, Eric and Nduh, good morning. Listening online radio up here in Muranga, I don't know the frequency of this area. I've tried searching, but I've found none. In Muranga, you can catch us either on 94.4 Nairobi frequency, could be getting to some parts of Muranga, and also our Njeri frequency, which is 90.9, will be reaching you in some parts of Muranga. So our frequency is especially in this area of Mount Kenya region, Njeri 90.9, Nairobi 94.4 is also catching. In Mombasa 87.9, in Kisumu 102.5, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, and Malindi 97.7. Let's talk about COVID-19. We always must talk about COVID-19 because it's an ever-present danger, right? So we have talked to several people who have given us their experiences with COVID-19. The Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. We've also talked to Active Citizen Charity Say, and they've given us their experiences. We've talked to other people who've also basically gone out there and said, you know what, I tested positive and this is what I've gone through. Now I've tested negative, or I've tested positive again, even after going through the entire 21 days of isolation. One of the senior most government officers to come out to say this is the Principal Secretary in the State Department for Crop Production and Agriculture Research. This is Professor Hamadi Boga. We spoke to him sometime with regards to crop production and food security in the country. Then he has been going out in public and saying, you know what, I tested positive for COVID-19. This is the experience that I went through. Then he also said, all right, so now I've tested negative again for COVID-19. And this is what I've lived through. And let's hear this person's personal experience, because he's been posting it and saying, you know, the musings of a COVID-19 scientist. Professor Hamadi Boga, good morning.
Good morning, Eric Latiff. How are you?
Salama kabisa. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante sana. I thought when we come back, we'll be talking about termites.
Yes.
But now we are talking about viruses.
Imagine.
Professor, we also want to greet you this morning. How are you?
Very fine. Thank you very much.
And delighted to have you again.
Okay, thank you very much.
The we here is myself and Nduh.
Okay, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Prof, you've gone out publicly to talk about your experience with COVID-19. Just take us through, for example, how you tested positive. What is it that made you go through the test? Was it just because we understand that government offices were also going, tests were being conducted in government offices. Was that what happened? Or was it that you felt some symptoms that led you to seek the tests?
Yeah, I've gone out to talk about my experience, firstly because I wanted to take this opportunity to share with Kenyans about the disease of COVID-19, because there was a lot of skepticism and cynicism around the topic. People were looking at it as a government issue and not a community issue, which is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I came out so that I can contribute to the conversation and to the knowledge and to the understanding. And so that when people ask themselves, do I know someone who has contracted the disease? I'm sure now many people would say, I know someone.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that my letter or my open letter has gone far and wide. I've been called from all over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is having the effect I thought it would have. Now, the other thing is that I felt sick. On 11th, I started feeling chills. And 11th, 12th, I was just feeling chills. Sometimes the skin would be hot, but most of the time I was feeling chilled. And I would go under the blanket and sleep there the whole day and just feeling under the weather. And then the body was aching and I was just feeling tired. And then after that came the cough, which was like a persistent dry cough that would not go away, almost like an asthmatic cough.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cough would go on and off. I would take antihistamines and use the inhaler because I'm asthmatic, just to relieve myself. But it wouldn't go, because if it was asthma, after you have taken some antihistamine and inhaler, if it's mild asthma, it would give way. But this one wouldn't give way. and then I would feel the left side of the chest tight, and then sometimes it would go to the right side, sometimes at the back. So some pain around the chest. And the lungs go all the way down the rib cage. Yeah? It just doesn't end at the chest. Sometimes you would also feel the pain at the back of the rib cage.
Yeah.
And then, so the symptoms kept on graduating. The cold, the chills would still remain, but the cough would also now persist. And then I started having feelings of nausea and dizziness. And then when I coughed, then would come like desire to puke. So now I would have I'm coughing, but I also want to puke. So I would rush to the bathroom and try to puke, but then I wouldn't get anything out. And I think I only managed to do it once or twice, but very hard. But the desire, that push to puke was always there. And then the muscles would ache, both arm muscles as well as the leg muscles. They would ache on the calves and so on and so forth. So for 3-4 days, the muscles were aching. So it is a graduation of symptoms. Then I lost the appetite. I don't know which came first, but I lost the appetite and lost the sense of smell. So I couldn't smell anything, whether good or bad. If I passed by a garbage dump, I wouldn't notice that. And if I passed by someone frying eggs, I wouldn't even notice that. And the food tasted terrible. I couldn't finish a boiled egg. And I stopped eating even fried egg because it was just off.
Was this a progression of these symptoms, or did they all come? I mean, which started? I know you said the first thing that you started feeling were the chills.
The first was the chills. It's a progression. They don't come all at once.
Right.
But in the end, you will have a combination of them at any one given time.
So, I mean, you're going through all of these symptoms while you're at home. You're taking yourself through the motions. Is this what is happening at this time?
At that time, I haven't gone for testing. And so day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, I was at work. Of course, I was observing all the social distancing, hand washing. So even as I'm sick, I'm even more conscious. So I'm telling people, wear your mask, stay a little bit farther away. Let's talk while you're far away, and limiting my interactions, basically doing most meetings by Zoom.
What was making you do that? Because you haven't done the test yet. Was it that you suspected that this could be COVID?
The moment I started coughing and feeling weak, my thoughts were going there. I was looking at the usual diseases because most of the symptoms apply also to other diseases. But I think anybody who feels this way nowadays, even if you don't go to test, you should suspect COVID and start behaving like you shouldn't spread it.
So
even if you don't go for the test, you should keep yourself away from family as well as from other people, so that you don't spread.
So at what point then did you go or make the decision to go and get tested?
So on Tuesday, I had a Zoom meeting. I don't remember what the topic was about, but immediately it was a 2-hour meeting. Immediately I finished, I started feeling dizzy. I couldn't see the numbers on the computers properly. And I wasn't so sure whether it was my glasses I had missed because of the masks, or whether it was something else. I got up. I was a little bit scared, so I got up and called my doctor and said, "I'm feeling funny." And I described, and then I said, "The first thing we do, let's go for a COVID test. And if it's negative, then you can come. We can look at the other things."
I went. Okay. Sorry, please go ahead.
So I went for the COVID test immediately, and I decided I'll stay at home until the results come, and I wouldn't go to the office or in any public place. And so I stayed in the house, and I told everybody to keep their distance, and waited for the result for 48 hours. I went on 14th. They came on 17th, and they were positive. Yeah.
Okay. So then, did you made a decision to enter into the home-based care protocol, or were you admitted in hospital?
I was advised to do self-isolation at home. And because I received the results via phone call, and whoever was giving me the results also asked me about what I was seeing, symptoms, whether I had difficulties breathing and things like that,
Yeah.
so as to determine the kind of advice to give. Then she advised that based on what you are describing, then just stay at home. If you have a self-contained room, lock yourself there. And she described how the family would then take care of me, and that the family themselves should go for a test the next day.
Now, this was from a private hospital that you had gone to conduct the test.
Yes, yes.
And they're the ones that called you back with the results.
Yes, yes.
Now, did you get any call from either the emergency response team or the Nairobi County for contact tracing, like asking you, Professor, we understand that you've now tested positive. Give us a list of the people that you may have come into contact with in the last 14 days or so?
No. That one I didn't get. What I did was now to get all the people who had been in contact with me and informed them myself. And I just called them because I don't have a very big pool of people that I interact with. In fact, nowadays, most people try to avoid interaction.
Yeah.
So I was able to reach all mine and told them to take note and go and get tested or take precautions and things like that. But apart from the interaction with the with the private hospital,
Yeah.
I didn't have any other interaction. What I did also, I called the NMS and told them to go and get the people in the office tested because the public building and the floor where I work, there are many people from messengers to drivers. So all of them were tested. Yeah. And I think because at this point this thing is exploding, we have to be proactive even as victims of this disease and as citizens, so that we help the system to help us. What I sensed even when I went for the test is that people are pretty overwhelmed because you see a lot of people coming for testing, a lot of activities, and I think the system at some point is getting overstretched.
To the best of your knowledge, did any of your close contacts test positive?
I think yes. My bodyguards and the driver, and also some friends, some friends and colleagues.
All right.
Had any of them gone for a test prior to you going for the test? And
yes. Actually, as I was talking to one of my friends and describing how I was feeling, and I had been with him a week before. This thing has an incubation period of 1 week, so it's like 7 days before you start feeling symptoms. So he told me, actually, my wife tested positive.
Okay.
So he was waiting for his own results, and eventually the whole family also tested positive,
Right.
then later negative. So there was other people before me that I had interacted with around the same time that tested positive.
so if a friend of yours had gone for that test, how did this test turn out?
Some were negative, some were positive.
The reason why I
Because,
ask is
someti-
so. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Because I think you could be in the same space, but the level of exposure varies depending on the intensity of interaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, what was on my mind was the networks that are created, because you understood what perhaps needed to be done, but you aren't the only person these individuals are in contact with.
Yes,
That's what makes a disease like COVID dangerous, because you honestly don't know.
You honestly don't know, but part of our obligation as citizens now in this era, when there's a lot of information, is to equip ourselves with the knowledge of how this disease is spread and the settings under which it can spread. I think now I'm more conscious of that than even before the spread. Before it was still, okay, I have the scientific understanding of it, but I was still sort of doing all what is necessary.
Yeah.
But there were certain mistakes that I could make. Like if I feel somebody is far enough, sometimes I would take off the mask because you don't want the interference when you're talking.
Yeah.
And I think these small mistakes are dangerous. I think once you are in a confined space like a room, and you're going to stay there with someone for a couple of hours, like an hour or 30 minutes, and you're all talking, you just better stick to the mask and make sure that the windows are open so that things don't linger around the room. Yeah, especially small rooms like offices.
Let me ask this question. If you didn't have a specific room that you could isolate yourself in, how do you think you would have managed this self-isolation?
That would have been tough because there were 5 of us in the house, my wife and 3 daughters. And so I said, even if any of them tested positive, it would be a challenge self-isolating. I think the key to self-isolation is the common spaces. And if you're sharing a room like to sleeping, so you'd really have to rearrange your lives. They are conscious. But I know it's very hard for people in slums and, for example, informal settlements, or if you're at the coast, nyumba za Kiswahili, where people sort of live communally. It really needs a high level of awareness and sacrifice on the part of family to rearrange their lives and reorganize their lives for 14 days to enable somebody to self-isolate. But if the families are given this information properly and they accept it and they are proactive and they want to manage their situation properly, I think in some settings it can still be achieved.
So on what day of this are you now? And how long do you have to go in terms of what you've been told before you take another test and all of this?
I already took the second test, and it was negative, and it's not necessary to do another test. And today is day 35, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling okay. Sometimes you have some symptoms that come back, like the cough, or some dryness of the throat, but I think these are lingering things that happen with every disease. I've been reading and I've seen that there are people for whom the symptoms take longer, like even 120 days. In literature, they call them long hauliers.
Yes.
So they are those. So everybody, depending on their experience and what they went through, their symptoms might stay for some time, because the symptoms are not necessarily caused by the virus, but they are caused by the reaction of your own immune system to the virus and how aggressive the immune system was.
Prof, looking at the staff, your members of staff who tested positive, and also your own experience, I want to look at it from the point of how the home-based care treatment is being managed and also the contact tracing is being managed. So first of all, you said that you did not receive a call asking you to list the people that you had come into contact with, but you took the initiative to reach out to the people, but also you asked the NMS to go and conduct tests at the ministry.
Yes.
When the people tested positive, and you said some of your staff tested positive, to the best of your knowledge, did they receive any follow-up calls on contact tracing?
Most of the time, when you get the when you get the positive, there is a leaflet that describes how you should self-isolate.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is the only bit of information that at least they got, and but they were disciplined enough to just stay off in their own houses for 14 days, and then they went back for retest, and then it was negative. Then they were free.
Okay.
And I know the system has some challenges and weaknesses, and we need to improve on that. But I think in this case, the citizen is the one who will save us. Their behavior or misbehavior will determine whether we go forward or we go backward with this. So I think we have to help the system. We have to help the government by volunteering. The moment you sense you have this challenge, you have to not wait and blame, but be proactive and say, I know about this. I look for information from wherever I can get it. I have to protect my family. I have to protect my community.
Yep.
I have to tell the friends I've been so that they can check their own situation. And I think the people who have the biggest challenge are the asymptomatic ones. These ones, the asymptomatic ones, will get them through this through their contacts. If their contacts are tested positive and they are tested and they are asymptomatic but they are positive, these are dangerous because they will continue spreading it because they feel healthy.
Indeed,
So I
what you're
think
saying is true, Prof, that the citizens have also a role to play once they're armed with the proper information on what they need to do, which is why I want us to move the conversation to when we come out of this break. What information is it that needs to be given to everybody and how they need to conduct themselves when they come across, when they get symptoms, if they test positive and all that. And also then, what's the role of the government in making everybody aware what they're supposed to be doing? This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're speaking with Professor Hamadi Boga. He's a Principal Secretary in the State Department for Crop Production and Agricultural Research in the Ministry of Agriculture, of course. And he's telling us his own experience with COVID-19. Keep it right here. We'll be back shortly. It's 26 minutes after 7. The Situation Room is on Spice FM and KTN Home.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Still quite overcast in Nairobi at 14 degrees. We'll see a high of 22 today, but those cloudy conditions are going to continue well into the night. And in Nakuru, 14 degrees, highs of 22 and lows of 13 with thunderstorms forecasted for today. It's a rainy situation in Njeri already at 14. We will see highs of 22 today, and in Eldoret at 13 degrees. It's partly cloudy, highs of 20 and lows of 12. Kisumu is partly cloudy at 20 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19, with a chance of showers later on. Kakamega also has a chance of showers later, though it's currently partly cloudy conditions at 16 degrees. Looking into Mombasa, it's partly cloudy at 23, highs of 29 and lows of 22. 23 degrees and partly cloudy in Malindi, highs of 28 and lows of 22. All right, let's take a look into Kampala, where at 19 degrees it's mostly cloudy, highs of 26 and lows of 19, with showers expected later on. And in Dar es Salaam, it's a shallow fog this morning at 22, likely to be overcast for most parts of the day, highs of 31 and lows of 22. It's really chilly in Johannesburg today, and temperatures are dropping, currently at 0. We'll see highs of 15 today, if that. Sunny conditions, however, and then going to a low. Now that has changed to -3. In Lagos, it's cloudy at 24 degrees. We'll see highs of 31 and lows of 23. And in London, very quickly, it's 16 degrees, highs of 19 and lows of 16, with showers expected later. Paris at 19 degrees is clear, with showers expected later, with highs of 23. And finally, for New York, we'll see highs of 29 today, with partly cloudy conditions.
Traffic.
Okay, let's see how this is all unfurling this morning on the roads. Not much in terms of drama today, and it's a third good day of very little traffic. We're not seeing much activity wherever it is that you go. Thika Road, though, is going to be a problem coming Friday, but we'll deal with that when we get there. All right, on Mombasa Road, coming then into the CBD, it's not too bad. It's a bit of a bumper-to-bumper situation right around Cabanas, leading to General Motors, but it should be all right thereafter. Coming out of Westlands is looking pretty good as you get to the University Way roundabout, and then Uhuru Highway from Nyayo Stadium towards Westlands is slow, but it's moving. In and out of the CBD will not be too much of a headache today. The southern and eastern bypasses are open, not a problem, as well as the service lanes on major highways. Spice of MKE, that's how you can get in touch on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
This is
94.4.
The Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home for this hour, and also on www.spicefm.co.ke. In the room, you have Eric Latiff, Nduh Okoh, and C.T. Muga. On the line is Professor Hamadi Boga, PS in the Ministry of Agriculture. He's giving us his experience on the fight against COVID-19. He tested positive for COVID, went through the motions of COVID, and tested negative thereafter. But he still says he's still feeling some effects of that virus and the disease. Prof, before we went to the break, you had told us, the citizen is the one that's going to save us. And that's true, because it's a community. It's spreading within the community, and therefore it's a community to stop this spread. But the government has a role to play, and that's why I want us to go back into. Now we are at the point where the government is rolling out and implementing home-based care. Somebody tests positive, they're advised to go and self-isolate at home. Given a pamphlet, and that's what you said that you and some of your staff received a pamphlet and a call that tells you this is what you need to do to treat yourself at home. Is there any sort of information that you're given? Should your symptoms deteriorate, this is the number to call, or this is the person to call, or how you can even work within the community so that you get support in the community itself?
Yes, at the end of the pamphlet, there's a number to call. The way I see it now, and I think this is the information that we should help reach every Kenyan, is there maybe 90% will be positive but asymptomatic. If all these go into the healthcare system, they will overwhelm the workers and they will actually not get the disease. And I think this is what was happening at the beginning, where you find all the beds were full, but they were full of people just just waiting for 14 days.
Yeah.
They're not sick. They're not showing any symptoms. So I think the first thing is once you test positive, you have to assess, are you symptomatic or are you asymptomatic? And this requires the citizens to understand the symptoms. So if you are symptomatic, right now this information about how to self-isolate and how to take care of yourself should be in every person's hand, every community health worker's hand, every village chairman's hand, so that it's ingrained in our psyche. Just the way how to protect yourself against HIV is ingrained in our psyche now. So that the 90% who will test positive don't rush into the clinics and overwhelm the workers.
Yep.
Instead, they self-isolate at home using those guidelines. I think we should share all this. I think they are available in digital form so that they can be shared. They should be in every corner, in every shop, in every maskani, in every mosque, so that people, in every church, so that people know I could be asymptomatic.
Why do you think
or
it
I
isn't?
could have mild symptoms, and this is how to behave. Because there will not be enough health workers for all of us, and the system could overstretch. I saw this when I went to the testing and also to the hospital environment. And then, of course, for the ones with mild symptoms, they need to know at what point do I press the panic button.
Yep.
And once I press the panic button, who do I call? Where do I go? How do I get there? I think that information is key. And the numbers are available. And I've never tested them because I was using the private system, which works a little bit different. But for the private citizen who is not able to reach the private hospitals, the public system needs to be tested to see whether somebody will have the care when they need it, when the symptoms go haywire. But I think information and knowledge and community engagement is what will manage this, so that we reduce the rush to the health system for those who are really critical and who are really in need.
Prof, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's critical in anything that is of these kind of proportions. But messaging is key, and it's something that we've always spoken about, to say that, there needs to be basic things that we are telling people so that not everybody's rushing to hospital looking for care, but that information then can be found. You've talked about this information being on phones, on flyers, in public areas, wherever somebody's going to go, they should be able to find this information. Almost as if we're inventing the ABCs, for example, of COVID-19. But there is a body that needs to do this. And I understand when you talk about that the common man or the common citizen needs to make their contribution towards this fight. But in this case, to get this messaging out there, it needs to also come from the one body that has the machinery to do this, which is government. And it's not being done. And as you say this now, it needs to be picked up because it's extremely important, but it's not being done. We can't even get phone calls made to people who are tested positive. So, how then will we make the transition from knowing what needs to be done and then actually doing it?
Yeah, I think we have had this pandemic now since March. That is the time we detected the first case. But according to some of the analytics that I have seen, it looks like it started much earlier. And I think there have been efforts right from the start with the regular press conferences and press releases and info materials that have been released to try and pass messages in various forms and in various ways to the citizens. I think I'm not in a position to judge the effectiveness of these messages and how they are packaged, but I agree we need to communicate better. I think this battle will be won or lost at the level of communication.
Absolutely.
Because we are calling upon citizens to behave differently from how they were used to behaving. And it's a global challenge, by the way. It's not even just a Kenyan challenge.
Yeah.
I'm in contact with some people, and they're saying even in their own countries, they have the same challenges. So I think we have also challenged the Ministry of Health, and I think maybe from this week, you will see more messaging coming, different messengers coming. And I think from where I sit, for example, I come from Kwale, that's home.
Mm-hmm.
And when I sit in a maskani and I listen to the discourse there in the maskani, I know Kagwe can never reach that maskani from the way he's talking. But I can reach that maskani. Sometimes I go to the mosque and I listen to the arguments. And for example, somebody is arguing, this is imajaliwa. Kama umejaliwa ufe na COVID utakufa hata ukienda wapi. And so what I'm doing, I'm telling the sheikh, can you counter that with a religious narrative, not a medical one?
Mm-hmm.
And so the sheikh says, if you wear a mask and you sanitize and you keep your distance, and despite your effort, you still get COVID, hayo ni majaliwa. But if you go out there recklessly and infect yourself and infect your family, hayo si majaliwa. In fact, hiyo ni kama unatenda dhambi kwa sababu unafanya mambo maksudi. So sometimes they might even have heard all the messages, but you need to go beyond the barrier of skepticism and some of the narratives that the communities are telling themselves. And sometimes the messenger is not necessarily the government, and sometimes the messenger is not necessarily the Ministry of Health. The messenger could be the elder, the messenger could be the sheikh, the messenger could be the pastor.
It's a local influencer.
Yes, the local influencer, because the conversations are happening at a local level. They are responding to Kagwe without even Kagwe knowing that he's being responded to at the local level. When you go to for example, Maskani, where the kids are drinking kahawa and they're playing draft and talking and infecting themselves, asema mambo ya Nairobi bana, mambo tunaona kwa TV tu. Uliona nani aliyekufa na COVID? So that one, even if you pump them with more pamphlets and things like that, you won't succeed. You need to get one of them who can turn that conversation. And so we need to find a way to reach the community influencers so that they can play their role of influencing their communities to be proactive. Na tuseme, kama haijaingia hapa, sisi majukumu yetu kama wenye hichi kijiji ni kuhakikisha kwamba haiingii. Kwa hivyo tukae, tupange, tujue mgeni akija tutamwangaliaje ili asituletee magonjwa. Tupange msikiti wetu, tujue tutaswali vipi bila kuambukizana. Na tuhakikishe kwamba msikiti uko sawa, uko na sanitizer, kuna social distancing, na kama ni mgonjwa anaambiwa haingii, ubaki nyumbani mpaka upone, usije ukaambukiza watu. Things like that.
From what you're saying, Prof, it sounds like, the government has all these protocols. It has a protocol on home-based care, has protocols on communication, has protocols on engagement and how to report the cases on a daily basis, has protocols on management of hospitals. But do you get a sense as if we have just copy-pasted what's happening in the West and not necessarily adapted it to what should be working for us here? Like what you're saying, community influencers, we should maybe have come up with a way of ensuring that we engage with the community influencers so that they can be part and parcel of the fight against COVID.
Yeah, there are certain things that are universal. That means they will apply in every setting, like the procedures for avoiding infection. But there are certain things that are localized, like how do you communicate this in this community? Like people, if they want to do a ritual circumcision, they're used to it and they expect to do it, and they don't want to go beyond that. And I see this as a problem in South Africa and in the Bukusu land. How then do you influence that community? Because it's a different conversation. It's not a medical one. It's a cultural one. But it's a cultural one which has an impact on the medical interventions that you are intending. So I think this is my thesis, is that the government needs allies, and I'm sure there are initiatives in that direction to reach out to the different community influencers, so that it's not a government thing alone. Government has done its part of making sure that the information is available. We need these messengers. For example, I've taken the initiative. We used to have a program on anti-radicalization in the coast with the sheikhs, so we have a relationship. So I told them, this is the same. We need counter-narratives from you. So listen to what the Muslims are saying about COVID, and you as the gatekeepers, because you're the ones responsible for the mosque. You're the ones responsible for the weddings. The wedding cannot happen without the qadi or the sheikh. You're the ones responsible for the burials. And those are likely hotspots where people could infect themselves. You need to reorganize the burial ceremony. You need to reorganize the wedding ceremony. You need to reorganize the mosque.
Yep.
And so you need to understand COVID and understand your people and be the one who will drive this change. Of course, working with community health workers and village administrators, so that you are still within the formal settings.
But this is engagement you've been having. Sorry, this is engagement you've been having in the last couple of weeks. Based on your own experience, and now going to the community and seeing the gaps that exist.
Yes.
From speaking to these community leaders, do they tell you whether they have had any sort of contact with government officers telling them the same thing that you're telling them?
I think there have been a lot of civil society activities going around. Our civil society is very creative, and so some groups like SUPCAM and especially SUPCAM or the Interfaith Council has come down, going to all these places, talking to the imams. But it has been this workshop kind of settings where people are listening, people are skeptical.
But not government.
I think it needs more than that. And so I found a mixture of sheikhs. Some were, there's no corona. This is just Americans trying to influence the world. That narrative is very strong in anti-Americanism and anti-governmentism. Yep. Anti-government sentiments sometimes in some quarters are very strong. So that is the barrier you have to overcome right there. And so when you localize it and contextualize it, and you get them to start thinking of it as a community problem, which has nothing to do with anybody else but how they behave, I think you start getting positive feedback. And this is something I thought I don't have to wait for anybody. I just have to go, because I understand the community and how it will react or not react. And we all have obligations once we have understood what we are up against to support ourselves. And of course, provide this feedback so that the government, the Ministry of Health, and other actors can see that even from communities, there are solutions that can be borrowed or can be adapted to help fight this pandemic. Because it's a global public health challenge, and we all have a role to play.
Do you actually think that the situation we're describing here in Kenya is a hopeless one? That there's no easy solution to it?
No. I don't think it's a hopeless one, but the challenge that we are all facing is influencing behavior in a society where people are struggling with many, many challenges. Remember, in some parts of the world, typhoid was finished long time ago, or even cholera, or even diarrhea. But, if you look at, or even malaria, and all this hinges on public health. And public health hinges on behavior, human behavior. And I think beyond the physical things and the medicines and so on and so forth, a large part of disease burden can be reduced through behavior change. And I think we need to put more effort on influencing behavior. And sometimes it's not necessarily the medical people who will achieve that.
Actually, they are the last people who'd influence that, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Because, you see, we have to look at expertise here. If we look at the health experts that we have, what is the area of expertise? Health. But if you're talking about community wherewithals and community norms, who are the experts? The people in the community. And if you were to ask even further and ask who knows what the community needs, I would argue it's the community who know what they need. But
yes,
so
yes, but you need to combine, because you need to recruit the community and make them part of the intervention.
Actually, Prof, you know the community is already recruited. If you ask me,
yes.
If they weren't recruited, they wouldn't be as cohesive as they are. They wouldn't get things done even on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What may be absent, if you're talking about health, one, it's a devolved function, and yet when we discuss health matters, we still discuss it as though it was just a national government function, and yet it isn't. We also discuss it as though structures within which something like COVID can be managed don't exist, and actually they do exist. HIV bequeathed us that gift, meaning because of the attention that was given to HIV, right around this country, we were able to have groups of people, individuals, who were not only just trained in managing and handling these matters, and they didn't go away simply because we got to a point where we were managing HIV better. They didn't go away. So it's whether these devolved governments can actually utilize the resources that already have at their disposal. And if you ask me, the resource is human resource. And I'm arguing they do have them.
Yes. No, I agree with you. I think you see like the way the county of Mombasa reacted to the COVID and how the governor was very proactive in mobilizing resources, in setting up isolation centers, in locking down parts of Old Town and other areas where he felt the infection was getting out of control. I think that is a fantastic partnership. And I think the counties, because they are also close to these cultures, it is important that they become the bridge and the filters that collect this information from national government and the guidelines and domesticate them, working, of course, with the community influencers. I totally agree with you. I think that is a very good way of bridging this gap between the national and the community. And most of these county governments have also formed administrative units all the way to the village.
Yeah.
So if you have a village administrator and ward administrators working with the national government officials, the Ngaos, and the sheikhs, forming teams, they should be able to reach down into their communities and shape the conversations there and help in the fight against COVID. I agree.
COVID-19. I know we're going to wrap up in a bit, but Professor, a question, because when we look at HIV, for example, as CT brought in, the messaging changed after some time, whereby even the buzzwords that were used at some time had to be changed to be more accommodative. But for COVID, I would say that the messaging needs to begin. It doesn't need to change because really in terms of solid, clear messaging that needs to come from top down hasn't really been formed in a way that people can then pick it up, especially when we talk about some of the things that you mentioned, like asymptomatic cases and what they need to know. Don't you think that it is necessary then for government to have a united front with community influencers, with community workers at this point to say, this is what the messaging is, then go, as opposed to we've done our part, you take up the mantle. It does need to be united across board, doesn't it?
It has to be united all the way. And we started in March. We're in August. It's 5 months old. I know it could be fatiguing, but I think this battle has just begun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we are making some mistakes. We need to do some adjustments. But I think the most important thing is we need to learn from the processes, we need to learn from the failures, and we need to learn from the areas of weaknesses. We need to learn from the experiences of other countries to adjust our own system to be responsive. And I think there is room for that, and I think that is happening because we are an open society. We are not in denial. And I think with the robust debate in the public sphere, in the Maskanis, in the WhatsApp groups, I don't think this thing, the debate and the suggestions are falling on deaf ears. I think people are adapting, and communities are also being innovative. I think, for me, we will succeed if we get the community to be involved and to be creative and to own this problem and to make sure that together with the counties and the national government, gradually we increase our capabilities to tackle this problem. And when I talk about capability, is community resilience against this disease, hospital capability to manage this disease, community health workers' capability to reach their villages and their people with the right information, and scientific capability to make sure that testing does not become the limiting step. The limiting step in this has always been testing, and it doesn't give us a big picture of what is happening, so that we look like we are riding on an iceberg. And then, of course, the capability of the national government to coordinate the national response to this and to link to international networks. So this is something that has to continue growing, strengthening, and reaching the level where we are, for example, with HIV/AIDS and other diseases, but also reducing the fear and shifting from fear to respect for this disease because of what it can do, and knowing if we don't do the right thing, so that people are not just running around afraid. Because what I've seen is that some people, once their relative test positive, they go into hiding. Or even themselves, if they test positive, they go into hiding because they...
Professor, I'd like you to consider what your ministry would do in this fight, because the vast majority of our population are still very agrarian and they rely on farming, and that falls directly under your ministry. Just food for thought.
Indeed.
We created what we call a food security war room. Immediately COVID started, and we were looking at, we must continue producing, we must continue making food available, and we must make sure that the food is affordable. So we've been tracking food production and encouraging food production and making sure that food is produced with COVID compliant conditions. So we created guidelines together with the counties, and we shared these guidelines for every aspect of agricultural activity, from production to logistics to transport. And that is why you can see the food production, distribution, processing was declared as an essential service, and prices have largely remained stable, and we are tracking these on a daily basis together with the counties, and we are able to see where there is a surplus, where there is a shortage, where the markets are open, where the markets are COVID compliant. What we want to do now is to tweak our market guidelines to the point where the Mama Mboga also takes responsibility as they go to the market. The market committees also take responsibility for the market, so that they don't see this as just the government coming to give directives and they're there trying to resist, but as co-creators of the solutions around the market environment.
A lot needs to be done, Professor. A lot still needs to be done. A lot has been done. A lot still needs to be done. We thank you very much, Professor Hamadi Boga, for speaking to us this morning. Thank you very much for sharing your story and your experience.
And it's always a pleasure to come here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor.
It's a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. We take another break, and then we'll be back shortly. Good morning.
Ready? Okay.
Spice FM. 87.9 Spice FM. Mombasa.
Just to remind you about KPA's information portal, this is Captain Cargo. You can find it on www.kpa.co.ke/Captain, Kargo is one word, Captain Cargo. And Captain Cargo is where you go and find information relating to KPA's operations. If you need to know any of the processes, import, export, clearing of your goods, even some of the terminologies used in KPA, even some of the fees that maybe you need to pay for whatever process, you'll find all this information on kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. Today, we are looking at one of those processes, which is, we've already done that, helped CT to export a consignment of, what was it that you were sending? Pineapples to the UK.
Yes. And they've reached, and the Britons are enjoying that summer treat. Now, CT is going to import some stuff back to Kenya and is looking at getting some stuff on a vessel. And so we're going to look at what Captain Cargo says you need to do to import some of these goods. They're going to tell us what that is in a short while, CT. But there's processing documents for import cargo, and there are things that you need to do on this side. And Captain Cargo makes it actually quite easy for you to know what it is that you need to do. So even if you do have a shipping agent and they're making all of this information then made available to you with their communications between KPA and KRA, you know exactly what needs to happen on your end as well.
Actually, I want to import generators, domestic generators. Yes.
All right.
Not these massive behemoths, but just small generators that can act as a backup within the home. That's what I want to
Super duper. We're going to go through that processing for you today.
Okay.
Yes.
Coming to the top of the hour, we'll be looking at today's proverb when we actually cross over into the hour, so you can tell us that, and also we look at any Swahili translation of it. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the next hour, we look at Africa and the emergence of Africa's economies, and also what is COVID-19 doing to the continent, and what are the opportunities that we find with this. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so the normal traffic that we see on Mombasa Road this morning is not too crazy, but it's going to get you into the city, you know, with a bit of patience is what is needed. A lot of people got off this road at about 5:30 in the morning. And so now we see around Nyayo Stadium roundabout, it's going to take you to Huru Highway, and it's going to be a little bit of a hold up, but you should be fine then getting into the CBD thereafter. Getting onto Huru Highway, however, and then joining all the way to Westlands, if you get into the city, you should be fine. All right, at the Pangani underpass, heading off of Thika Road and then towards the Globe Cinema roundabout. A little bit of traffic there, but not too crazy. So today looks like an okay day to get through traffic. On Jogo Road, getting to the CBD via the City Stadium roundabout, that also had a little bit of traffic, but nothing too terrible. The eastern and southern bypasses can be used, not a problem there. Spice FM KE, tell us where you might be stuck. We might be able to give a solution or give somebody else some help if they should need it.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation
It is 2
Room.
minutes after 8
the
o'clock.
Only
This
way to
is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM and KTN Home for the next 1 hour, but also this broadcast on Spice FM every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. CT Muga, let's begin the hour with today's proverb.
Because a man has injured your goat, do not go out and kill his bull.
Give us the context of this as we start.
Well, the contexts are usually really very broad. The political ones are the easiest ones to sort of like conjure up and talk about. Just because I have refused to vote in the direction you wanted me to vote doesn't mean you have to harass me the whole night and then put me in a cell full of people.
Yeah. It was just a goat.
You
eh,
don't-
after all.
That's rich, Titi.
That's just one. You do not need a bulldozer to kill an ant, for heaven's sake. If something goes wrong, there are other avenues that you can use to solve the problem. You don't have to take an extreme measure. That is not the only way to solve a problem. Really.
Alright.
Really.
Killing a mosquito with a hammer.
That's it. You might actually end up causing more damage to yourself because we tend to strike mosquitoes when they're on our body.
Yes.
So imagine you may get the mosquito, but you also get your body.
Indeed. Shall we talk about Africa? And the narrative of Africa rising has been there for a while now. Africa's economies, Africa's young demographic, Africa's increasingly educated demographic, Africa's natural resources, all those factors coming together to make Africa one of the future economies of the world. In fact, the future economy of the world. And the whole issue of Africa rising, that all the investment is now focusing, and the big investors internationally are focusing their investment into Africa, and all that conversation has been happening and saying in the next 1 or 2 decades, Africa will not be where it was 1 or 2 decades ago. And then COVID-19 comes, and it was expected by the West as well that COVID-19 is going to really, really hit Africa very hard. We have seen that the effect of COVID-19 on this young demographic of Africa is not comparable to what we see in the other Western countries. However, others argue that it's still early days, so that don't count your chicks yet. The eggs haven't hatched. All the eggs haven't hatched. So all these conversations are happening. But then things that are happening in the 80s in Africa and the 70s are still happening today. Coup d'etat is not a foreign word, at least to the people of Mali. In the last 24 hours, they have seen some mutinying forces that have gone all the way to Bamako, that have forced the president and the prime minister to resign and step down from office. And now the military is basically in charge of the government in Mali. We are seeing the kind of issues we see in Cameroon. They're historical. They keep flaring up. There's now a flare-up of the violence in Cameroon. When we see this in other parts of the continent, is Africa still rising? Is Africa's rise getting derailed?
Are we asking about their rising, or are we asking about the direction in which they're rising?
Or the speed.
Because honestly speaking, Eric, if you think about it, why are these people protesting? And if you look at, let's focus on Mali, all right? What really is the subject of conflict here? An election that is disputed.
Yeah.
That is not strange on this continent. It is actually even not strange on the
In
planet.
the world.
Yes. But what seems to be consistent is the inability of the leaders who are already in power to understand the need for compromise. Not compromise which suits them, but compromise which accommodates. Remember, Cote d'Ivoire had a similar problem.
Yeah.
Compromise was being asked for. None was forthcoming. The end result was disastrous. We had a similar problem in this country. We reached a compromise.
Yeah.
We were able to move forward. We were hurtling in the same direction that other African countries have hurtled. Because the thing is, violence tends to spiral, and then it just gathers a momentum of its own, and then becomes almost impossible to contain it. We saw the French had taken their troops to Mali to sort of like help stabilize the government. But if the discussion that is being asked for, remember they're asking for discussion, accommodation, if it isn't even considered, what do you think is going to happen? Because these people have made up their minds. They are not happy. And that's why that is the way they're expressing their unhappiness. So one could argue that Africa is rising in the sense that they are not putting up with leaders who they feel are not sensitive to their needs. What I would ask is this the way to solve the problem?
Is this the way to go?
Yes, is this the way,
But
this direction?
what impact, for instance, does it have to the economy of that country? And indeed the region?
It takes it to the dogs completely.
And that's the issue then. You see?
Especially in these COVID times, when people are reading the doldrums. If you think that you are sinking, the question is now how deep, much deeper will you sink?
Will you sink?
Because you will sink.
On the other hand, if we flip the coin, we keep talking about the opportunities that and the lessons that we can learn from this COVID. So COVID has come, it has hit us hard, it has made us adapt to very many things. What are these opportunities? And then how can African governments, the private sector operating in Africa, take advantage of these moving forward?
The issue here, Eric, is this. The movement forward hasn't been influenced by other activities or other events that have been taking place on the planet. It's called the opening up of the political space. The reason why the coups that we spoke of in the 70s and 80s and some smattering of them in the 90s was because multipartism gave an avenue through which people could express their interests, their dislikes. You had an avenue. Previously, there wasn't that avenue.
Yeah.
Now, if someone still wants to hold on to a way of doing things that other people have rejected, you're forgetting that your people have actually acquired the understanding of the times. So there are things they might have put up with at an earlier time. In the present day, they will not. Not in this information age, not when people have at their fingertips information of what's happening right across the globe. So they're not just comparing you with the leader who preceded you in your country. They're comparing you with your neighbors. They're comparing you with the rest of the continent. They're comparing you with the rest of the world. That's what they do. And they also want to see the things that they consider good happening elsewhere happening in their country. Now, if you represent the things that are good which are not happening, then, my friend, you have a problem on your hands. You genuinely have a problem on your hands.
So let's talk to somebody who understands Africa's markets, right? And this is the Eastern Africa markets leader at EY Africa, Frank Mwiti. Frank, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Salama kabisa. Welcome to the Situation Room. Say hello to my colleagues.
Hello, guys, and thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Frank, you see what's happening in Africa. I mean, you, as the EY Africa, have been looking at the markets in Africa, have been looking at the trends, and everything is intertwined. Business growth, political growth, democratic growth, all those are intertwined. And with what we are currently seeing in Africa, leave alone what happened yesterday in Mali, just look at everything else before that, and then COVID comes and hits. What is the outlook like?
That's an interesting question to ask, Eric, and maybe the way I would respond to that is taking into account what you just mentioned about Africa rising. Of course, in the recent past, we've had large headlines such as why Africa can thrive like Asia, Africa rising, as you say, Africa is becoming the new China and India, and all these things point to, of course, the continent's tremendous potential, but so far it looks like they've been off the mark. But at EY, based on recent reports that we've rolled out, actually we believe this time is different, and I'm happy to be held to account on that statement. And why we say that is there are three things that are actually coming together despite COVID and, of course, the other handships that are there globally, that we think give Africa a huge opportunity now to supercharge its growth. And that's around, number one, of course, technology and the enablement that technology is bringing to our markets, whether that's, for example, our money transfer services, the ability for a large portion of our people to connect with each other almost instantaneously. And that is also opening up opportunities for our people in Africa. And Africa is very well positioned to actually take advantage of that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is demographics. There's no doubt that, of course, we have a very young population almost across the whole of Africa, bar very few countries. That demographic is actually well suited to take advantage of the opportunities that now exist in the global environment we are living in. And that then combined with the changes in technology is actually showing that Africa is now well positioned to actually use its demographics and use the technology opportunities to go one step further and up the ante on its economic development. And the last bit is the obvious one. We are the single biggest continent physically, the natural resources that abound are, untold. So you are getting into a position where even the geopolitics that we are living in between the US-China pool is actually pointing to Africa being very well positioned to use its natural resources and the physical vastness of the continent to its advantages. Now, that can, of course, be misused. It can be a wasted opportunity. But I would say that COVID has actually brought the need for African governments to actually come at the table and make use of this opportunity in a more robust way. The reason I say that is COVID has shown, of course, that food security can be easily disrupted given the issues we have with our supply chain. It's also shown that our local manufacturing really needs to be a bit more self-sufficient because of the disruptions that we've already had from our local markets where we source our raw materials, for example, China, India, depending on what it is that you're manufacturing. And then thirdly, of course, is the need to now have more intra-Africa trade. And that is actually expected to jump from about 10% a decade ago to about 14% just on the back of COVID.
What is going to make it jump?
Well, we have to, and the truth it's good that the speaker before me did actually point to the need for our populations are becoming a bit more alive to what really their government should be doing. I think I will not talk about Mali. I'm not well versed on political matters and things like that. But the point is, this actually crisis is one that should not be wasted, particularly in Africa, because it's an opportunity for people to actually first point out to the huge inadequacies that are there in the way a lot of our resources are managed, the huge dependency on other markets, the lack of sufficiency in our own capabilities, for example, around food, the huge disruption in hospitals and education shows you that we really have inadequacies that need to be addressed. I think this is a crisis that must not be wasted. And our report actually does show that Africa is well positioned to actually by some luck, I don't want to say whether it's good luck or bad luck, to actually be at this inflection in time when it is now time for us to actually make some of these things work without just belaboring in the past.
But we were well positioned long before COVID.
I was going to say that easily, Frank, 10, 15 years ago, it was global knowledge that Africa has been positioned to, even some have been sensationalist enough to say, take over the world, right? Been positioned in that manner for some time. The bottleneck in very many cases has been implementation. So even as COVID has shown the light on some of these inadequacies and many of these inadequacies, and has shown that some of these things are possible, the bottleneck in oftentimes seems to be implementation from country to country, Africa as a whole, international organizations that govern things that you have mentioned, such as trade. Implementation in most cases seems to be the problem, has been the problem for 10 years, is the problem today. So with or without COVID, how then will the implementation then see this to fruition?
Right. Good point. The way I would respond to that is this, that implementation the lack of implementation is actually a symptom of deeper issues. And the deeper issues are first governance and state capacity. So you have problems with implementation if you have weak governance, and the pillars underlying governance, of course, point to some inadequacies around our state, particularly our institutions. So you're right that implementation has been a problem. But what I mentioned is that actually things are going to be easier to implement, for example, because of our technology, the technology opportunities that exist. The example I would give you is that the ability to actually reach out to our citizenry in various countries that we live in and talk to, give them awareness on either what government is doing, what it's not doing for that matter, what they need to be held accountable for, it's much easier. So that is already an ingredient to a better way of enforcing implementation. So I'm not disagreeing with you. There are, of course, areas where we still have work to do. Governance and, of course, state capacity is a big issue. That if that improves, and it is improving by and large across Sub-Sahara, that will then, of course, lead to more successful implementation of economic policies, and more importantly, of course, the follow-up and monitoring that needs to be there. The second bit that is also important to mention is, in the past, we've also the economic growth in Africa has been impeded a bit because of some of the mistrust for foreign powers, as you know, because of a lot of our history.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those barriers are also getting reduced, and that will you can actually see, for example, some of the non-traditional actors, such as China, being in our continent and actually doing some things that you can actually say whether it's economically viable or not is a different matter, but there is implementation. What I'm trying to say is the balance of power in the global order is changing, and it's changing actually to Africa's advantage. It's just a question of how do we make sure that works for us, and more importantly, to your point, how do we make sure that the policies that are put out there are actually implemented properly?
Is there anything to indicate that governments are actually taking advantage of this? Like you've said, balance of power is shifting in Africa's favor. It's upon the governments and the private sector to ensure that they are striking the right deals and taking advantage of this. Is there anything to indicate that African governments are rising up to this?
I would say the data shows it's a mixed bag. Okay. There are three, by and large, if you look at the continent, there are three sectors that one would say represent the biggest opportunities for our continent. That would be agriculture, of course, manufacturing, and lastly, aspects of services. Mm-hmm. In agriculture, I think there are actually countries, including our own, that are doing a good job of making sure that agriculture actually is used to propel our economic development, and that will continue to be the case, to be honest, because that sector is going to be a growth engine for probably a long, long while, knowing that Africa's growing population is forecast to double by 2020. So it can't not be solved by imports alone. We have seen policies being rolled out that reflect seriousness around making sure agriculture works for us. You know that across the world, Africa is the remaining 60% of arable land is actually seated here in Africa, and we can see there are examples of that happening. So I would say, at least for agriculture, that is happening. Now, of course, there is foreign money that is coming to make large-scale commercial agriculture work in Africa. There is still work to be done around that, but you can see countries like Kenya, Ethiopia, our neighbors in Uganda and Tanzania, actually, there is actually work going around that.
No, Frank, my question was actually about governments taking advantage of this and ensuring that the kind of deals that they strike with anybody who's coming to invest in Africa is to the advantage of the people of Africa. You have seen all these stories that abound all over the media, that some of these contracts that are being signed off by governments in Africa are going to be to the greater benefit of the Chinese or the other Western powers. Are African leaders thinking about their people?
Perhaps let me give you a live example, like the US-Kenya trade deal that is still being discussed.
Yeah.
And while it's being discussed, there is a discussion taking place in the AU, in the African countries, about a free trade area. How would this particular agreement affect this free trade area that the continent is discussing? The other countries that have also had agreements with other countries in the West, how does it affect this unitary plan that we seem to have?
Okay, so maybe let me start with the comment that Eric made, and then I move to that bit about the Africa Free Trade Continental Area. Maybe let's start by saying that, of course, we have a diverse range of governments on the continent. The responses will be mixed. They have been mixed. We have seen, for example, countries negotiating very favorable concessional funding from the likes of World Bank and, of course, AFDB that I think our governments are taking advantage of, because those are facilities that are being made available for various countries to help navigate COVID-19. So they are examples of actual government taking advantage of this crisis to actually have conversations that are beneficial to the various economies they are responsible for. So that's happening. I would say that actually out of 10, I would say it's a 7, maybe a 6 in some cases out of 10. The bilateral discussions, case in point, the one between Kenya and US, as you've cited, I personally think that's the right way to go for 2 reasons. The first one is the truth of the matter is the new Africa Free Trade agreement will take a while to actually get bended. Okay, so the spirit, I think, is there. The government, of course, for example, in Kenya, is part of the signatories there, and there is work behind this initiative to make that work. It will be a while. It is important, I think, that we agree that every country needs to, of course, make sure that it sorts itself out and takes care of its people. The U.S.-Kenya trade treaty is supposed to actually be, all the press shows, it's meant to be used once it's successful as an example of what can be done with other countries, and maybe that then becomes potentially an input into the larger Africa continental discussion, or maybe a country-by-country type replication. So that's important, and that needs to happen, because in fact it should be a learning point for our government on how to negotiate with other entities going forward, given that, of course, the importance of US in this dynamic. So I think there's advantage there. But it is also true that we've had some failing, and that's not just our country. Many of the countries in Africa have had what I would say imbalanced agreements. That's changing. It's going to be a long shot, in my view, for some countries. But I also believe that the African Free Trade continental area actually is a good framework to then drive inter-Africa trade first and foremost, and then, of course, trade with other external entities. So at the cornerstone of that, AFCTA is actually driving intra-Africa trade. So you can see that there is really a slight, it's not one like for like between what US and Kenya, for example, negotiate versus how Kenya takes advantage of the intra-Africa playing field.
So let's take a break.
No, it's not.
Let's take a break, Frank, and we'll come back and continue with this conversation, especially looking at how this agreement, the trade agreements within the continent and between the continent, different countries and other parts of the world are done, and also look at the investment between investors from the West or from the East or from other parts of the world are coming into Africa, or within investment within Africa itself. It's 25 minutes after 8. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We are on the line with Frank Mwite. He's the East African Markets Leader for EY Africa. We'll be back shortly on Spice FM and KTN Home. Good morning.
The weather.
And the sprinkle has begun in Nairobi this morning. It's still quite overcast and raining in some parts of the city. Highs of 23 today, currently at 16 degrees. In Nakuru, it's cloudy conditions as well at 16. Likely to see some rain later on. All right, taking a look in other parts of the country. In Eldoret, it's 15 degrees and partly cloudy. We're likely to see this throughout today. And in Kisumu, sunny conditions at 20 degrees, highs of 30, and then coming down to lows of 20. Kakamega at 21 degrees at the moment, partly cloudy conditions and a chance of rain later on. Looks like it's going to be a rainy day across the nation today. 18 degrees currently in Kakamega. And then looking at Mombasa and coastal towns, Mombasa at 24 degrees, partly cloudy conditions throughout the day, now seeing a high of 13. Stepping in then out into Kampala, 21 degrees and partly cloudy, chance of rain also quite high. We'll see a high of 30 in Dar es Salaam today, where fog has covered most of the skies and is quite overcast and low this morning. In Johannesburg, it's a freezing day. Now at -1 this morning, temperatures continue to drop. We'll see highs of only 14 now and then going down to lows of -4. It's getting to be quite a cold winter. And then looking into Lagos, it's overcast at 24 degrees, highs of 30 and lows of 21 today, and a chance of rain later in the afternoon.
Spice up your life. Spice FM. Njeri. Traffic.
All right, Mufaiga inbound is bumper to bumper, and this is all the way, and it's joining from all roads, Kiambu Road and from Greater Thika Road. Bumper to bumper at Muthaiga Corner and also at Kiambu Road Junction, then leading to the Pangani Underpass. It's a mess. And in just a few minutes, this has all come together. So it needs some patience to get out of there this morning. We'll see how that opens up in about a half hour or so. Mombasa Road is not looking too terrible right now as you then get to the part where construction is taking place. You get out then past Bellevue without too much of an issue and then on towards Nyayo Stadium Roundabout, or if you're joining Langata Road or joining Bunyala Road trying to get into industrial area and beyond. So you should be fine. Jogo Road now leading towards industrial area or leading towards the CBD at the City Stadium Roundabout is bumper to bumper, but not too terrible. Okay, so it looks pretty good. We will look at it about half hour or so and see how that may have changed. Don't forget, you can let us know if you're stuck somewhere or if you find an alternate route where there is some traffic. Do let us know. Spice FM on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
It's
FM.
9:30. No, 8:30.
Okay. Where are you rushing to?
Yeah.
Wait, this guy's going to tell us it's Thursday. Just give him time.
Today, the 19th day of December, 2020. This is a Situation Room on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Malindi 97.7, Njeri 90.9, Eldoret 96.7. In Nakuru, we are on 96.0. In Kisumu, it's 102.5, and Mombasa at 87.9. We're also live on KTN Home and www.spicefm.co.ke, as well as Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. On the line, we have Frank Mwiti. He is the East Africa Markets Leader at EY Africa. We are talking about Africa rising and whether Africa is still rising despite everything else, COVID and all of the challenges. And CT, before we went to the break, we had asked Frank about what you're seeing now, the negotiations between Kenya and the USA on a trade agreement, vis-a-vis what we are seeing Africa-wide, the talk that has been there for a while on the formation of the Continental Free Trade Area and how long that will take, and whether those two are competing.
You see, the agreement that we are discussing with the U.S. reminds one of an agreement the U.S. had with South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something you can learn from. The impression one got was that the U.S. trade agreement was more or less isolating South Africa and working with them and not considering the rest of the continent. And yet the discussion that the continent has been having is so that we can have commonalities in platforms from which we do our business. If you look, say, for instance, as just a simple issue of logistics, our logistic cost on this continent is 7 times higher than that of Europe. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about competitiveness, the moment you have that disparity, then this discussion that we're having actually becomes moot. For the simple reason that you can discuss the platforms, but when it comes to actually ensuring that there is some benefit derived from it, the cost alone will push out any benefit that you may talk of. Now, when you talk about the difficulties, of course there have to be difficulties. Of course the countries are different. But of course, where Mr. Mwiti is right is there's the understanding that we do have the resources and that if we work in a certain way, we can benefit each other. We can. But that isn't happening. There's talk about it. There's lots of talk about it.
Intra-Africa trade and
Yes,
all.
there's lots of talk about it. But what we see is how African countries get into agreements. The US was just an example with other countries to do business with them and not necessarily taking into consideration this so-called continental benefit.
But I don't get it though, City. I mean, if you look at Africa itself, intra-Africa, there's been all this talk and all these economic blocks that form. COMESA is one. If you look at communities like the EAC, trying to have all manner of federations, whether it's political, economic and all. Look at West Africa, Southern Africa. We have those.
Of course we do.
And then we have the continental one that's now looking at how we can trade better within the continent.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world.
If you have an understanding...
Or are you saying that then it should be all of us collectively as Africa negotiating with the US?
That would be the desired end, but it doesn't work that way because some of these countries that we speak of, we've had relationships. The variety of African countries have had relationships with. You see, trying to get the continents act together is a work in progress. It is not that you shouldn't have an agreement with these other countries. By all means do, but make sure that it's aligned with the agreements that have been discussed and have more or less been agreed on should benefit the continent. That's really what it's saying. But if the idea of isolation comes into being, then it means that the understanding is just between you and them. Now, no country gets into an agreement with another one to benefit the other country. No. You first of all consider the benefits you are going to get, and then you throw in as a sweetener the benefits that will accrue from this deal for that other individual. Remember, the broader discussion about the continent and where Mr. Mwiti is right is with this very understanding that he is actually putting across. But this understanding, as things stand right now, and the reality surrounding it, it falls in the realm of a lovely dream.
What do you say to that, Frank?
I quite like the summary end there about it being a lovely dream. And in many ways, I can relate to that point. But I think there is 2 points to make there, which is that it is true that one would say there are, of course, U.S. motivations for getting into the proposed FTA, the free trade agreement, is about largely a symbolic move by the U.S. to neutralize probably China's influence in Africa, and maybe there is reason for that. But the negotiating objectives that were announced on 27th May around the Kenya-US free trade agreement was twofold. It was about building on the objectives of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, which, as you know, it needs to be renegotiated on the back of it's, of course, coming to an end. So that's important. You can argue that has not been used to its full reality, and that there's room for growth there, for improvement there. And of course, the U.S. then talks about they're also doing it in a mutually beneficial trade agreement that serves to be a model for additional agreements across Africa. So there's that bit. There is the other bit of it, which is the Africa Continental Trade Area Agreement. That agreement is primarily about intra-Africa trade. I do not necessarily think these two things are mutually exclusive. I do agree that perception here is, it's almost showing that Kenya is providing cracks in the armor to push collective agreement as Africans out of the, in a different direction. But look, I think the two are not mutually exclusive. I think we need to go in here and negotiate, and that's actually maybe the ask that you're highlighting. Our government needs to negotiate in the context of course, first and foremost, Kenya, and secondly, of course, in the context of our other neighbors around Africa, knowing that there's going to be a continental trade agreement that is coming through. That has not been implemented yet. These things take time. I would rather we did both, negotiate very hard, and of course get to a point where one is complementing the other. I do not think that it's the winner takes all. We either do a deal with US and we ignore the Africa agreement. I think it's about driving a very hard bargain with the US, get the right things for our people. In the meantime, see how to then complement that with the Africa-wide initiative, which is primarily meant to drive intra-Africa trade rather than export, which is what, of course...
Mr. Mwiti, to be able to drive a hard bargain, you need to have an upper hand. This upper hand that the continent has, what would you say it is?
If I just use Kenya as an example, as the key thing here, there's a reason why Kenya actually continues to be very, very important for not just US, but even the Chinese and actually other Western interests. It's the geostrategic location in East Africa is here to stay with us. They're not moving the country. That's for sure. Kenya is an economic powerhouse in Eastern Africa, so it is a vital entry point for US companies in the region. Indeed, even if you were to extend that to other geopolitical issues like the US war on terror in the Horn of Africa and the counterterrorism efforts that are being driven around our neighborhood, actually Kenya sits at the center stage of that. So there is that bit which we actually need to use to our advantage. China is also aware of Kenya's value. It sees the country as an entry point for Chinese investment into the rest of the continent, and has even pursued a free trade agreement with the East African community, which as you know, failed. So we actually have bargaining power.
Do we use that power, though? I'm looking at countries across the continent, and we go into these agreements, or we go into these contracting, or we go into these acts and such. Do we use the knowledge of that power? And even segueing into another question, do we use information then to make decisions upon which we can bargain and negotiate? Nobody has to tell Kenya, for example, that they are strategically positioned to do so many things, to make so many decisions, to have the upper hand that CT was talking about when it comes to bargaining. Do we use it to its maximum potential to be able to get through what you can get through that bargain, to get what countries can? Do we use it? Or is it just common knowledge and then we just, prance about with that information on our shoulders and not actually apply it to something that is going to help nations?
I would say the short answer is no, we don't. And it's unfortunate in many ways. Having said that, I think in the lens for US, Kenya, I think we also need to, of course, at least be realistic that there's a huge discrepancy between the US bargaining position and ours. So there's that bit. Now, what I think we need to be saying is, this time round, how do we negotiate differently in the context of we actually are in a sweet spot as a country? Number two, there's the context of Africa Trade Agreement, the larger continental agreement, as you say. And thirdly, we really have almost a lifetime opportunity to actually do something decent this time round. So I agree with you. We've not done it to the best. We've not used it as well as we should have. There's the realities of the imbalance between the U.S. position and ours, at least from a trade perspective. And more importantly, of course, that we need to negotiate in the context of our other partners. So whether that's China or indeed our neighborhood in East Africa, or even some of the traditional partners like UK, who also are pursuing trade agreements with Kenya. So you're right. We haven't used it to the best of our ability. We need to do it this time round. We need to be realistic, but there needs to be an agreement that actually is about intra-generational type positioning, not just the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years.
I wrote a paper about this when I was in college, and at that point, the potential that Africa has is something that was being spoken about. And it seems to me like Africa is treated like that kid in the race where they says, don't worry, next time you can do better. And then they run again, and then they're told, don't worry, next time you can do better. And we just keep trying to get to that place where what needs to happen for us to actually run this race? Africa Rising is a buzzword that has been used for so long. You can do it, Africa. Come on, let's egg you along. But really, can we just not just do it? Really?
Look, I'm in the same position as you are in terms of some of the frustration around, the latent potential that's there in our motherland. But, we still have room to make that a reality, at least in our lifetime for sure. I personally see this as pockets of good stuff. So, for example, I actually am quite proud of what Kenya has achieved in the technology space. I think we are running that race fairly well, and there is huge opportunities to drive that even further in leaps and bounds.
Compared to whom?
Actually almost everyone else in the continent area. Look, if you look at our financial services space sector as an example, and the technology underpinning it, and some of the way services are rendered, look, man, we are way, way ahead. I lived in the UK for 15 years. I can tell you for sure, compared to the sort of financial services access that they have versus what we have here, no, we are ahead. And if you travel around Africa, you'll actually see Kenya has actually done a decent job around that.
Is that what Kenyans tell themselves, or is this the reality?
No, it is the reality. you know, if you go to, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, you go to some of the francophone countries, my friend, they know, man. We are actually ahead. It's just that sometimes we don't know how good we are having it compared to some other neighbors. Now, I'm not saying that we are there yet. If you go to some places in Asia Pacific, for example, for sure, we don't compare.
Let me introduce perhaps an alternate perspective here, all right? And the thing that Africa has in abundance and can leverage on is something called arable land. Only 10% of this planet is arable, and 60% of that 10% is in Africa.
Yes.
Now, when you have an agreement where we are being asked by the US, part of the agreement is to import agricultural goods. I'm sure we should. It's a good thing. We should also import agricultural techniques that are beneficial, that have benefited them. But all this arable land that we have, if it's already 60%, it comprises 60% of the world's arable land. Is this not a resource that should actually get the focus of these African countries? Because the argument has also been there when you talk about Africa rising, that Africa could feed the rest of the world. If we have 60% of arable land, surely that arithmetic is not difficult to figure out.
If I can comment on that, you're right, absolutely. We are sitting on, a huge resource, and that is relevant not just for our growing population in Africa, which, as I said, is forecast to double by 2050, but even in relation to other countries. So, for example, Middle East is a net importer of food, etc. However, there are certain things about agriculture in Africa that we need to be realistic about, which is this, that farmland productivity in Africa has yet to evolve beyond subsistence levels.
Yep.
And there's no reasons behind that. Is we lack a lack of economies of scale because we have fragmented ownership. We have insufficient technology that's being used, and of course, the elephant in the room, little capital. Or insufficient capital going to that space. You're right. And if you are president...
What are you arguing against? CT disagrees somewhere. What?
Well, what Mr. Mwita is saying, if I was in an economics class, it would be 100% because we'll be talking about economic theory and how these things pan out.
So what's your argument?
I am saying that those are things you change with government policy. It's not complicated.
But they haven't changed. See, that's the point. Why are we where we are? We are where we are because, one, of our production capacity, capital, because of our fragmented ownership of land, so we are not doing large-scale farming. I mean, this is the reality. Are you arguing against that reality?
No, I'm not arguing against it. I'm simply saying there's an alternative narrative, which, in my opinion, is stronger. It isn't that we have subsistence farming. That is not the cause of our problems. Subsistence farming has its place. But policy doesn't mean you rule out something as basic as that. Policy means that you also focus on what you're calling large-scale farming that now caters for the sort of thing that I am saying. Now, countries that have actually followed similar policies have seen it work. So it's not as though it's something that doesn't work, and it's not something we're going to invent. It's just sufficient attention, as you correctly put it, has not been paid to it. Lip service. Our planning is immaculate, but
it's planned and then the policy is shelved.
So what's the missing link?
It goes back, I guess, to that point that was made earlier about implementation.
Absolutely.
You're right. We have very, very polished, world-class policy initiatives, even government directives, but implementation is a problem. Having said that, though, we are actually seeing increased product. All the reports actually show that African farmers their productivity is slowly but surely going up. And where it's going up in places like Ethiopia or Ghana, for example, the governments there have implemented, starting off with simple things like basic mechanization, agricultural technologies around fertilizer, irrigation, improved seeds. In places like Kenya, you've actually seen institutional money coming into the agricultural space, including technology. And the idea is to try and also shift Africa to focus on high-value crops. Now, I agree with you. Implementation has been a problem. Policies, I think we've got right. We understand what the issues are. We still are on a journey here. I think we need to at least say...
is our problem implementation really, or is our problem something else? I'm thinking the same people that craft these policies, and they're world-class policies, are the same people who are also in charge of the implementation. So how can we say that, you've sat down and you came up with this brilliant paper, and then when it came to doing what you really felt passionately about, you were unable to do? I have a feeling that there's an external force. There's something else that is making this implementation not take off.
I'm not necessarily sure about that, but what I can tell you for sure is in other countries, let's use South Africa as an example, although the demographics around land ownership there are slightly different. But if you put policies that attract commercial capital into agriculture, actually you will see it sorting itself out, because the policy environment we are in is fine. The rule of law around, for example, land ownership is more or less okay. We have issues, as I said, around fragmented ownership and all that stuff. But the truth is, to get into serious commercial farming, you need to attract commercial capital. To attract commercial capital, you have to have that direction as a kingpin of how we want to develop the agricultural sector. Maybe there are other forces, but I'm not aware of those. I'm a firm believer is we can solve our own issues without necessarily
being interfered with.
I wouldn't.
So you're therefore saying that we are the same ones who are unable to implement. We have the brain to think, but not the hands to do.
We're not unable to implement.
So why aren't you implementing?
Look at the coffee and the tea industry. These two industries have small-scale farmers. And for the longest time, even with that structure, they functioned and they thrived. It's not as though they didn't thrive. And the reason was because they understood collectivism. Meaning you may be a small-scale farmer, but you're part of a bigger body. So essentially, it must as well be one large-scale farm, given what you people how you go about your business.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to talk about improvement, I would talk about technology, because some of the problems we have is even the losses of what we actually produce. Pre and sometimes even post-harvest. Lost, meaning it either rots, it delays, something happens to it. So you never actually realize the full value of it.
So let me ask you, is it that we do not know that we need technology?
We know.
Is it that we don't know what kind of technology we need? Is it that we don't have any paper that talks about the technology that is needed?
We know.
So where is the gap?
The gap is that over time, we've had a situation where the very thing that needs to be done is like they are a group of people who seem hell-bent on ensuring that the very things that ought to work don't work.
It's not prioritized. And that's the thing. We keep talking about developing and wanting to develop. However, the development is not the priority. And unfortunately, it is at the point of leadership. And I would say that if you look at the private sector, look at private companies that are invested in agriculture, look at private companies that are invested in technology, why do they seem to be able to go and grow in leaps and bounds in the same countries where we're saying we have problems with? Why is that? Why do private companies, why are they able to then develop energy strategies? Why are they then able to go into that? Why are they able to develop or even invent and then also create and innovate along these lines? But then in national governments are not able to do the very same thing within the same geographical locations. Why? Why is that? Because it's not a priority. It's not a priority. I'll give you an example of Nigeria. Look at it where it has been hell-bent, hell-dependent on oil. You have private companies in Nigeria who are going the agricultural way and are succeeding. Why is that? It's not a priority. Had it been a priority...
So what is the priority?
The priority is to keep staying on one point and trying to milk out of a cow that is
And you
already
want to
dry.
Essentially lining your own
more than
pockets.
There you
100
go.
million
And lining
Nigerians,
your own
more than
pocket.
100 million Nigerians have no priority, don't have that priority. We're talking about how many years of Nigeria's independence where Nigerians have ruled themselves. Over 100 million Nigerians have never come up with that priority. The priority is there.
Not for the national government.
Okay, so who's this government?
Not for the national government.
Governments come in,
The
governments
national
go,
government, the
governments are
one
put in by people.
who has the power,
Yes.
who has the machinery to get this and get it done, are more interested in lining their own pockets, unfortunately. And it is a very small, it is a minute percentage of the general population.
State capture.
There you go. And that's why I talked about an external factor. And this tech capture is not just because there's a cabal in government that is thinking very Pan-African. No, it serves another interest somewhere. That
And it's
for as
interest
long
of a very
for as
few.
long as you're not able to produce en masse, then this whole talk of you telling us, oh, Africa can feed the world is a pipe dream.
It's never going to happen.
It's not going to work.
Guys. Just one comment to make on the small scale aspect of farming and how it's worked in other economies, and then we can talk about that what you just mentioned about why do we keep getting it wrong. So in other economies, the truth of the matter is small scale subsistence farming has worked where there is strong cooperative institutions. So Ireland is an example. Ethiopia is actually coming through on that basis and other aspects in other areas in countries in APAC. So to the earlier comment around subsistence farming, I think if you look at, for example, tea and coffee, when it was particularly successful, actually the underpinning institution around that was the cooperative. Of course, for tea, there was the KTD and all that. So cooperative movements still have a huge opportunity in Africa to actually harness what successful small scale farming can do, because the big issue there is lack of capital and lack of market access, which cooperatives can solve.
Yep.
But going back to your point on why is it we keep consistently getting it wrong? Look, we have challenges around governance. I think there's no question about that. These challenges around governance, absolutely every country on our continent. We think that this time around there's a better opportunity for actually to make governments accountable. But people must also elect the right leaders. We can't.
Mr. Mwiti, when they're elected, they're all right. Believe me. The road. Yes, at the point they're elected, believe me, people are convinced they're okay. The road seems to set in later.
We need to take some of the blame, my friend. We need to take some of the blame. If I am running a business and I recruit the wrong people to run it, and if they run it to the ground, I also should take some of the blame, my friend. I think we need to say
your vetting was wrong. Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
Actually, the vetting is usually right.
Yeah, how did they get there in the first place?
Because they convinced us they were the right people.
Okay, so the root cause then needs to be to sort out how we identify who are the right people.
Actually, there's no silver bullet for this one here.
Isn't it about time the buzzword of Africa Rising?
No, we need to expand our
changed?
vetting. You know, we go to some certain organizations, like I'm sure Frank will tell us, EY Africa doesn't just go and sit with somebody in one interview.
How do we know they don't?
I said, I'm sure he'll tell us. You can confirm that, Frank. You know, you go through a rigorous process. There is vetting, there is checking of background, there's background checks conducted. So by the time somebody has actually passed through that sieve, you are you're never 100% sure, but you're almost sure that whatever they told you matches with whatever else you've been told by other people about this person. But Frank, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. 1 hour is not a long enough time. It's actually a short time. We'll have you again soon to continue this conversation, Africa, trade and growth, and all matters pertaining to African markets. Frank Mwiti is the East Africa Markets Leader at EY Africa, and he's been speaking to us this morning about Africa and our economies and our potential to grow. We thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Asante sana.
Thank
And
you,
also
Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
we want to say thank you to our audience on KTN Home. We've been on KTN Home since 7 o'clock to now, coming up to 9. We'll be back on KTN Home next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 7 to 9. But this show broadcasts every morning, every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM, and also on our digital platforms, www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. 3 minutes to 9. Good morning. www.kpa.co.ke/Captain KARGO. Captain Cargo is a new portal by KPA which offers you information on what KPA does. And the Kenya Ports Authority, well, we know, first of all, Kenya Ports Authority does not just operate from the Kilindini Harbour in Mombasa. They run various ports around the country. They run, along the coast of Kenya in Nyanza, in Kisumu. There's a port there. We have the inland container depots around the country. And all this information you can find on this portal and what services the KPA is able to offer you. And then you also know the processes, particularly the processes. So this time, we're helping CT to import generators from the UK to Kenya.
Yes, CT wants to light up the nation. So, supplier arranges for cargo inspections to conform with the pre-shipment verification, right? So, this is you in step 1 of importing your cargo. So, you're making sure that everything on that end is in order. Thereafter, you get this certificate of conformity. So, the partner that you'd be looking for essentially gives you this certificate so that you know that you're ready to go. Now, this is on the other side, and you compare this with what you have here in Kenya, and they say, all right, carry on. Okay, with your certificate, this is when now your 1,000 generators will be loaded on the vessel, and the shipping then begins. Now, thereafter, this is a commercial consignment, obviously, because you're selling these things here, right? The supplier then applies for an import declaration form from KRA. So KRA gives you that, and then you're on your way to bring your generators into Kenya. This is what Captain Cargo says.
www.kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. You'll find all this information there. Keep it right here, because in the next hour, we're going to help CT move on from that step. And these are all steps that you can find on the portal, kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. Good morning. It's a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Traffic.
A little bit crazy inbound onto the road. Getting yourself into the CBD is going to need some patience today. It's not moving as you'd like it to, but you should be able to get in and out without any problem. Okay, so remembering that the Thika Road will be closed from Friday for 5 days, so you need to make sure that you plan your routes properly, because that means that there will be some traffic in the morning as it opens up. On Mombasa Road, getting into the city centre is not too terrible either. So today looks pretty good, guys. I don't think we have much of an issue. We'll keep an eye, though, and see if anything does change. You also keep an eye for us. Let us know so we can spread the word. Not to forget, on Twitter, it's SpiceFMKE.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have CT Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
2
day.
2 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we thank you very much for keeping it right here. Just before we start the next topic, City Muga will remind us today's proverb. And today's proverb, by the way, we are asking people to tell us anything close to this proverb in Swahili
Or
in
some language that you're familiar with, which
Mother
isn't
tongue.
English.
which is in English. What's the proverb?
Because a man has injured your goat, you do not go out and kill his bull.
Except
What should you do with the bull? Injure the bull.
Well, that's for you to decide, really. Just don't kill it.
If he doesn't have a goat that I can revenge with directly.
Well, the thing is, when you go to kill someone's bull, you're taking vengeance to its ultimate. Yes, you injure my goat, I kill your bull. So,
Yeah, it's to send a proper lesson.
I'm replacing injury with death.
Yes.
Yes.
I am basically sending a message. Try that again. You try.
And see.
Yeah. You try, Utanipad.
But the other thing that came to my mind as we're talking with one Mr. Frank Mwita,
Mwiti.
sorry, I apologize, is, you see, people always present this argument that small-scale farming is not economically viable. On its own, yes, maybe. But this country has adequate examples of how, even with that system of small-scale farming, the farmer has been able to benefit.
Yep.
We've seen it, and as you correctly put it, with the cooperative. Now, part of the reason why the cooperative actually worked was due to a very simple reason. They had something that was maybe the beginning of what we now call warehouse receipt system,
Yep.
where you take in your goods and you can use it as collateral to actually gain finance. You can get sort of like a prepayment before even the things are sold and go through the processes. So the issue of there not being money doesn't actually even arise.
Yep.
Because those goods of yours can actually translate into, because their value is not unknown. So that system almost acts as an alternate banking system for
futures
somebody.
trading.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, remember the implementation of this new strategy by the Agriculture Ministry anchors strongly on this.
It does.
On the warehouse management system.
Have
We
we
spoke to the professor at
have we cemented it?
It's now being implemented. Remember, it's in the process of discussion and implementation.
And yet the workings of it have been in existence for
It was
decades.
to happen by September, if I remember
Yes.
that interview.
Tanzania and Uganda have it.
To certain degrees.
It's a very serious working degree compared to ours, which is nascent and is actually still being discussed. And yet, as I say, if you look at the agricultural sector, this always actually existed. Not in the form that we currently know it to be in the world, but existed. A farmer need not wait for the produce to be sold in order to access financing.
Yep.
Yes.
And also the issue of small scale and subsistence farming. The truth of the matter is, yes, you find very many people with small pieces of land, and what they're able to grow is not economically viable in terms of them going to look for market by themselves.
their own,
and all.
yes.
So the conversation around even working with these small scale farmers, I know I've had a conversation with some people at the Agriculture Ministry for some time, and that discussion, that debate has taken place. Even some professors at Egerton University on how can you bring together all these subsistence farmers and let them create a giant body or a big body that agrees that all of us are going to grow this crop, and then we are giving this one organization, this one entity, the power to market, the power to grow. Basically, we are leasing. It's like you're leasing your farm.
But you must then have
To an
buy-in.
organization.
You must have buy-in from
The community.
You must have buy-in from the community. You must have buy-in from the government.
By the way, for
And
the
if government doesn't make it a priority, those wonderful ideas then basically get thrown out the window, which is what I was saying. You can have the potential, you can have the resource, but if you don't have buy-in in terms of it being a priority item by the government of the day,
You know, the story of our lives in this country seems to be the many strong, long strides we've taken backwards. There was an organization called the Kenya Farmers Association.
Yep.
It more or less looked after this thing we're discussing here.
Still exists.
Yes, there was. In the form it existed then, it did. In the form it exists now, I have no clue what it does.
We'll ask its new chairman, Nick Salat, soon.
Yes.
Who's recently appointed chairman of this. So we'll find out. I mean, some of these organizations existed, and this is what they were doing. Anyway, let's look at today's top headline. Ruto Raila criticize state of arrests. Stop the madness, say Ruto and Raila. What's the headline in the Star?
The Star, Raila Ruto unite, rebuke cops over senator's arrest.
There you go. So all the headlines this morning are Raila Ruto and Raila Ruto rebuking the government. So first of all, Ruto is the deputy president in this government.
For those who didn't know.
For those who
may
may have forgotten,
forgotten.
okay, is the deputy president. That means the deputy head of this government.
Of state.
Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is the leader of opposition party called ODM, and this is the single largest opposition party in the country. And for those who may have forgotten, in 2018, March 2018, stood at the steps of Harambee House and shook hands with the president, and they have now been cooperating. So they have very easy lines of communication and very direct channels of communication. So when these two gentlemen speak 2 days after an event, and that event, they come to castigate how that things happened, how the events took place, it basically raises the question: why speak yesterday? Why speak? Was it choreographed that they speak at the same time, that they release statements at the same time? How come we're seeing these headlines? All the headlines in the papers today are these two pitting against one of their own, the president, and saying this is not how our government should operate. This is not how our state machinery should function. This is a deputy president saying this is not how our government should operate. This is a Raila Odinga who's working with this government who's saying this is not how our government should operate, and saying it publicly 2 days after the event. What's happening here? City, recently you have raised the question and said, you know what we are being treated to in the Senate? 9 sittings. None of them has gotten to a point where there's proper direction on what exactly the contention is with regards to a formula. None of them appears to even show that we are heading towards consensus in what we can come up with as a solution. From the first meeting to the 9th meeting, what we're getting is more and more proposals to amend a certain proposal. Every new sitting, there's a new proposal that has been brought in as an amendment, as a proposed amendment. Now we have a committee of 12 people that is beginning to sit today in the Senate to look at all these many proposals, to look at what the Commission for Revenue Allocation proposed initially, to look at what the Senate Finance Committee proposed, to look at, and then sit back and come up with one harmonized proposal. And we are sitting here hoping that this time they'll get it right. And you've been saying you don't believe that it's for a lack of understanding or a lack of consensus on the floor of the Senate.
No. If you consider the length of time, this particular matter has been in the Senate, and the opportunities that they have had to discuss this thing, it's been more than ample time. And then now it gathers heat and momentum, it becomes combustible. Suddenly, everything other than what should actually be discussed is being discussed, in my opinion. And then the outright lies that keep coming from the county. We don't have money because the Senate can't seem to agree. Not true. Then you throw in marginalization. Then you throw in money being taken away from us. Now, if you are entrusted with ensuring that an important role and function such as this one takes place, and then you degenerate the entire discussion to some historical issues which have existed in many places, still exist, but to an infinitely lesser degree than they existed before, and you make it sound as though that thing began yesterday and we've not moved since 1963, then you're not telling us the truth. You're not being honest. You're not being truthful. So one Mr. Muti said, bad governance. No governance. This is horrible leadership. Because if you're leading by example, and this is the example we're supposed to follow.
This could be the strategy of the leadership.
To do what?
To just distract you. You are so focused on something else. On the day that this committee should be sitting down to harmonize, instead of that committee being the headline, it is stop the madness that is the headline. This headline could have been yesterday's headline. The madness happened on Sunday night. Yesterday was Tuesday. This headline could have been yesterday's headline.
Even Monday.
As a reaction, or even Monday morning could have been the headline. This is happening on Wednesday, on the day when this team is meeting. Basically just throwing it off again.
And if you
look at the leaders who are talking about this. If Raila Odinga wanted consensus, especially from his side, which the side that he leads. He commands support in that house in terms of the minority. He can just basically call a parliamentary group meeting of ODM and say, guys, come. I hear my minority leader says this, my minority deputy leader says this, my minority whip does not agree. Can we just sit together and agree? So what is the issue? Can we move forward? We haven't had anything like that. The deputy president and the president have not called their troops in Jubilee and their coalition partner KANU to sit down and harmonize one position.
You never really want to openly say that there might be something lurking in the shadows and that's the reason why we see all this drama. But the fact of the matter is that over the last 2.5 months, whatever has been playing out is not what you want to see. Look, it just shows, and it would then lend credence to any kind of belief that, or any kind of statement that there's something else going on, because it just doesn't make sense. There is no logic that can be applied to this thing why you cannot come and sit and have some kind of consensus, or at least have some kind of debate that leads towards a decision being made. Not for 9 weeks, not over and over again, and by the time the day is over, there's nothing that you've actually resolved. And then to see the kind of drama that we've been fed over the last couple of days, then I would also have to say that there's something else that may be going on, or there's another plan that has already been set in motion that would then come and surprise Kenyans once again, because it just does not make sense. And it's also actually a bit sad that Kenyans then would have to be treated in this manner over and over again, to say that, you know what, we have to distract you all a little bit with a little bit of drama so that you actually don't see what is happening behind the scenes. And if this is what is happening, then actually, yes, it is quite sad. If the big words that people use, like democratization, over and over and over again, and these are the things that are happening, then Kenyans are being led for, taken for a ride yet again.
If you look at every time a matter gets to, say, the National Assembly, you're talking about Parliament, and you consider the number of times we have contentious issues, I would ask the question, how often do we have a debate such as the one we're having? How often? Something that just drags on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Hardly ever. And part of the reason is because within the Senate, for the longest time, the Senate just seemed to appear to be a rubber stamping institution. So when a debate arises, well, it arises for a while, and then it's like what was anticipated as the outcome actually becomes the outcome. So the discussion moves on to other things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or full steam ahead. Look at the BBI, for example. They came, asked questions, Kenyans participated here. Was there ever any doubt that it was moving forward? No. It was not week after week, let's do this, Kenyans, shall we? No, this thing is moving on. And those who decided that they had the opportunity and the power to be able to push this thing through went with it. We move on, we go. And now it went from reporting stage until committee of, what were they called? Committee of experts, who then went around the country. Task force, taking up, picking at the minds of Kenyans to find out what they really wanted. There was never any doubt about whether this thing was going to be implemented or not. Now there's even no doubt about whether... Never contention.
On anything that was presented to the committee.
No, never debate or no, absolutely this is not going to be. What we saw is that then was a rise of compatriots, and they said, okay, now this is the way that we want to go. And then you saw sides split.
Yeah.
But the sides that split still were in the political class. So it was never a question about whether... And so now what are we being told? There's money for referendum, and this is what we're doing, and this is how we are going ahead. What am I saying? This nonsense that you see going on for 9 weeks, if a decision wanted to have been made by now, they would have made the decision. Just the same way a decision was made with BBI, and now what you're being told is that there will be referendum to change the way in which the Constitution will work. They want to do something, they'll do it. Bold enough to say that they don't want a decision right now at the Senate. There's something that encapsulates your mind and your thinking at this point, and it's a drama that you're being fed right now while something else goes on.
So something else is happening in the background.
Something is happening. Something is going on. It's just too clear.
We are being distracted from something.
There's something going on.
There's a strategy called the dead cut strategy, or dead cutting, and it refers to the introduction of a dramatic, shocking, or sensationalist topic to divert discourse away from a more damaging topic. This strategy, or at least the dead cut metaphor to describe it, is particularly associated with an Australian political strategist called Linton Crosby. Crosby was employed by Boris Johnson as his campaign manager during the 2008 and 2012 London mayoral elections and wrote of his advice that there's one thing that I'm absolutely certain about throwing a dead cat on the dining room table. And I don't mean that people will be outraged, alarmed, or disgusted. That's true, but irrelevant. The key point, according to Miss Cosby, is that everyone will shout, "Geez, mate, there's a dead cat on the table." In other words, they'll be talking about the dead cat, the thing that you want them to talk about, and they'll not be talking about the issue that has been causing you so much grief. You are in a meeting somewhere with people and things are not going your way. What do? You just place a dead cat on the table.
Center of focus is changed.
Center of focus changes, and now we are all talking about how did this cat die? Is it smelling?
And then there's this small matter. If you look at the arrest of the 3 senators, that's the work of the DCI. Now, fundamental difference here between the DCI and the DPP is that the DPP's office is an independent unit. Justice Odunga clearly stipulated that and indicated it's something that is cast in stone. But Justice Odunga also pointed out that the issue of prosecution rests with the DPP, not the DCI. So you may arrest if you wish, but the likelihood of it going beyond the arrest if the DPP doesn't agree. So the question you want to ask is, we know that the DCI probably answers to the president. It's not independent as does the head of the Kenya Police Service. Not independent. What was to stop them from actually having a little discourse with the DPP about this matter and the issues that they wanted to raise? That wasn't raised, and this is what gives credence to what has been doing the rounds in social media. That the purpose of the arrest had nothing to do with whatever the charge sheets read.
Had everything to do with scuttling the process that should have taken floor in the House of the Senate, on the floor of the Senate. So, I mean, then you want to ask yourself, so what is it? What is it that is so crucial? What is it that is so important that the attention of the entire nation needed to be shifted or needs to be shifted? Is it this? Is it the first time that they would have done the allocation of funds for counties? Is it the first time?
Not.
No, it's not. Is it the first time that they needed to agree about how much money then was sent? It is not the first time. So what is peculiar about this time that the attention of the entire nation then needed to be shifted? And I'm thinking that's the kind of awareness that people need to have. When you see something, you want to smile and say, "Oh, fantastic. I'm going to sit in front of my TV for the next 3 hours and see what's going to play out here." And that's exactly what they want you to do. Exactly what they want you to do. So you're not actually thinking beyond the drama, because at that time, those precious hours are being used to think of something else.
You know, astute political practitioners or leaders will choose their fights very carefully. And usually it's fights that they can win. And remember also, there's the question of when a political leader speaks, who do you think they are addressing? We read it and you think they're addressing you.
Yeah.
Is it you they're actually addressing?
I'm not talking to you.
You're a secondary audience.
Who do you think they're actually addressing with the statements? Because according to us, the media, Raila Odinga and Ruto are supposed to have daggers at each other's throats all the time.
Suddenly they're speaking in the same voice, singing the same chorus on the same day.
Actually, you've missed out an important point. They're in the same choir.
What is it that the country, the nation is being distracted from? Because this whole issue of a standoff in the Senate, these statements now that are coming from the top leadership of the country, the deputy president, the leader of the largest opposition party, who is cooperating with the government and who has direct ways of dealing with these matters. From a government perspective, they're coming out to speak out against it. It becomes a national headline. It's a distraction. Do you agree with us or do you not? 0719-012-600. Let's take a look at the skies and see whether there's a dead cat out there.
Spice FM, Malindi.
I don't know about raining cats and dogs, but it is raining in Nairobi. 16 degrees, a light drizzle around most parts of the city, and the rain likely to get heightened highs of 22 and lows of 14 today. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru at 16 degrees. We'll see high of 22 and lows of 13 with showers for most parts of the afternoon. Njeri is also following in fine form with light rain showers being experienced now at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 20 and rain throughout the day. It's mostly cloudy in Eldoret at 14 degrees, highs of 20 and lows of 12 with showers expected later. 23 degrees currently in Kisumu and mostly cloudy. Rain expected later with highs of 27. And in Kakamega, it's 19 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 16 with wet conditions in the afternoon. Malindi follows in fine form, 26 degrees and mostly cloudy. Rain expected later with highs of 28 and lows of 23. It's mostly sunny in Mombasa, 26 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. And mostly cloudy in Uganda as we step out of Kenya, highs of 27 with lows of 19. And the forecast is for rain as well. It's very foggy in Dar es Salaam this morning, likely to be that way throughout this Wednesday, highs of 30 and lows of 22. It's warming up ever so slightly now in Johannesburg. It's 1 degree, highs of 14 and lows of -3 is what the weatherman says. 24 degrees and partly cloudy in Lagos, highs of 31 and lows of 23 with showers in the afternoon. Let's take a last look into Europe where it's partly cloudy in London at 17 degrees. It's going to open up into an afternoon of rains with highs of 19 and lows of 16. Paris is sunny at 18 degrees. It's going to change, though, into rains later, highs of 23 and lows of 18. New York, scattered thunderstorms will greet this Wednesday morning and last throughout the day with highs of 27 and lows of 18.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
This morning, and you're saying that this whole charade is a distraction from something else that is happening, something else that's more important, that could otherwise be occupying people's minds and attention. But for some reason, now the attention is on what's happening at the Senate. And this is a whole conversation about there are gainers, there are losers, there are people who are going to gain some millions of shillings, others are going to lose up to 1.3 billion shillings from a formula that was proposed by CRA, from what the leaders from certain regions are doing. There's a whole disagreement back and forth, and you can see there's unity of purpose when it comes to leaders who come from different regions of the country and from different political parties coming and either standing for or against a certain position. So it's not even about political parties anymore. The partisanship is not on political party base. It's on something else. And you're not able to really pinpoint and say, it's because of the ideology or because of the region where they come from. It's not necessarily any of that.
And you know what is of interest? That even as we are dead cutting or discussing the dead cutting process, we really wouldn't have a leg to stand on if our political leadership was more reliable with what they say and how that translates into what they do. But the history has been a lot of what they say is precisely just that, a lot of what they say. So when you then have a debate such as this one here, a debate that centers the entire discussion on money that should go to the counties to ensure that the counties function, something that they've been doing for year in, year out, suddenly this thing has gripped the nation. And everything that you can talk about is going. I'm surprised they haven't said that, we haven't been able to disburse COVID money simply because
the Senate has not agreed.
The Senate has not,
No. There's a likelihood of an angle to that story. The county is saying, the whole country looking at getting a peak or being overrun by COVID-19 and saying, we had a lot of, destruction or delays in the disbursement of funds to the counties, and the counties are the ones that are managing COVID-19. And so they were not able really to dip their hands into the national kitty and pick some money. And that's why you see that counties were overwhelmed. The health systems were not able to cope on time. It's because we did not have enough lead time with enough money to support this.
So what we're saying is that some of these pending industrial actions with the health workers in the counties could also be blamed on this very same thing.
Yeah.
And yet, even prior to COVID, if there's one thing that we've had our eyes full of, is these industrial problems that the counties seem to have with their
health workers.
Yes. One county is complaining to the courts who have reinstated them. Another county, man, the variety of stories around health workers in the county are almost as varied as the number of counties that we have. And I have to ask, it's a devolved function. Why is it that this matter is never really resolved? It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And yet we have counties that seem to have had their heads wrapped around it and they figured out what to do. So it shows that it is not as impossible as some people may want to make it appear.
It's not impossible.
No.
But what is it that then is happening that we are not focusing on when you're focusing on what's happening in the Senate and the arrests in the middle of the night and the transportation of legislators from one region to another over hundreds of kilometers, and then the DPP looking at it and saying, I'm not going to charge them. And then political leaders coming out to say, no, that was very wrong. That was wrong of the government to do. What is happening that we are not focusing on? The biggest challenge that we have right now as a country, of course, is the economic impact of COVID-19. There's COVID-19 itself. There's the economic impact of COVID-19, which comes directly to people. People have lost their jobs. People have lost their incomes. People are not able to fend for themselves on a daily basis. There's not money in the pockets. So the issue of there not being money in the counties could also be, just an issue that can come and be used as an excuse.
And I think we must also remember that it was when the questions started getting a lot more heated about what happened then to COVID funds that came into the country that should have been used to fight this pandemic. And the questions remain. Where did they go? There's something that comes about when there's a repetitive nature in questioning about what happened with funds. And it wouldn't be far beyond reality to actually say that, look, you know what, we're tired of some of these questions. Let's put the focus on something else for now, as we're able then to figure out what to do. It would not be far removed from reality to have that. I mean, there's so many other things, like you say, that are going on right now that attention is needed to be refocused elsewhere, and then create a little bit of drama so we don't really have to think about it by now. By the time Kenyans come back to their senses, we would have moved on and we'll be talking about something else, as normally happens. Because you wouldn't be asking. Look at what happened when there was the whole uproar, and which it hasn't stopped in my mind, about schools having issues with their infrastructure, and then one collapsing, and then students dying, etc., etc. And then there was a report, and then it never really happened, and nobody spoke about it again. And there was going to be an inquest, this, that, the other thing. There was yet another stampede in another school, safety concerns and precautions. Nobody spoke about it. Okay? Then what happened? Floods came. Then what happened? Locusts came. Then what happened? Other things happened. Nobody's really talked about it again.
By the way, the locusts are still coming. Huh? Just so that you understand, huh? It's not as though they went forever. Even they have holiday season when they come here. So it's not as though that because we manage the situation, it has been managed for keeps. No, it's temporary. We can expect them again. But if you think about it, we've spoken about, for the longest time, the Black Lives Matter took center stage in almost every discussion. And we've seen changes. In the country where it began in the US, we saw some very, very interesting changes taking place and awareness. But the question I have to ask is, are those changes going to be lasting? Now, did the gentleman need to pass away? Did he need to die in the manner that he died for this to become an issue? The answer is, of course not. Of course not. Now, I want to pick this. The fact that this matter has been highlighted by the Deputy President and the leader of ODM tells me this. It is a matter that should be of national interest, that there are times when our police force do things which they are not supposed to do. Because that's essentially what the leaders are saying. You are not supposed to conduct yourself in this way. You're not supposed to do this way. But it brings me to the real question. can we then rightfully say that every Kenyan should have the same right to have the same sort of support as these 3 leaders have had when they face these same problems? You're walking home, you are late. You are walking home, you forgot your face mask. People who commit offenses that could easily be sorted out with a rap on the knuckles and told, don't
repeat.
But you're all bundled into a lorry and you're taken to wherever it is you're taken, quarantine. It's not that people shouldn't be quarantined, but it is the manner in which it is managed. Why should the mwananchi always be the one who faces the blunt instrument, the blunt force of the very, very laws that are supposed to protect them? How are the laws protecting the citizenry? You see, so long as the law seems to protect people who have high-sounding positions or who have been elected to positions of high authority, then you cannot say that the law that we have in this country is a law that caters for the needs of every citizen. You can't.
But are the police not supposed to do anything just because you're a mheshimiwa or because you are whatever?
The thing is this, it's not that the police shouldn't do what they're supposed to do. By all means, they should. And if indeed they have a case, they still have an opportunity to make that case. Present a case that can actually be taken to court. Don't let it stop there. Because this story seems to be dead. It's finished. They were arrested, they're no longer arrested, end of story.
Finished.
If the case was a genuinely serious case, then we should see these people being taken to court. Then we will know that the law is actually working for everybody in the same way. Remember, we did see one esteemed senator actually going to court. We did see, and we saw what he did. He was wise enough to have apologized profusely, did sugarcoat what he did. Now that matter is forgotten, and people are at peace with it. This one doesn't create peace. At least in my mind, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It asks many questions. And then when you see now that there was a dropping of the charges, then you ask yourself, again, akin to what we're talking about right now, when you see those charges then having been dropped, you ask yourself, so what was the hullabaloo about? Why was it necessary for you to create this whole scene and all this drama on that particular day? Then it is clear in the minds of people that there was something that you were trying to scuttle. Because the next day you drop the charges and nobody's discussing it anymore. So why was it necessary for you to do all of this the day before? And those are the questions we should be asking.
You know, we've asked this question before with regard to 2022. And this question was even asked with regard to the narrative around this discussion in the Senate. Now, it points to, one, the bell has been rung for the political processes for an election to actually begin. And you can tell by the narrative. The us against them narrative has begun again. This time it's begun in the Senate, and it's begun with these people are getting more money. No, sorry, not even getting more money. These people are taking our money.
Our money.
Yes. Money. Now, the moment that debate takes that, now you tell me, where do you think it's going to go? Because it has begun, and by the way, that debate has welcomed it. There are years that just welcome it because that narrative explains many things that you should have done and you didn't do. You could have done and you haven't done.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So thinking goes out of the window. That is through the
brain. A single flame in a dry forest.
Exactly. So instead of having a useful discussion that brings out the fine points of how these processes are arrived at and how the arithmetic that the Commission on Revenue Allocation will go through to actually get to this, that is lost. And yet these are very able Kenyans who know exactly what they're doing. And these things we're discussing here, they take these things into consideration. And remember, it was a process. Let's start here. The consideration of trying to take care of those injustices was one of the considerations that the division of spoils had at the beginning.
Yep.
Let us make sure that we try and write this by funneling more money so that this can happen. Funneling more money so that this can happen.
Yep.
The discussion of what the money was purposed for and whether that was achieved never takes place. So we're still at the marginalization stage before this money even ever came into being. And this is 7 years down the line.
with trillions of shillings.
1.8. And here we are supposed to just go along with this and say,
Oh, it's okay. There was some drama on Monday.
I-
We'll figure it out.
yes,
Yeah.
the
We'll
debate
figure
is
it out.
good, but why not debate the really germane issue? Why not bring out the discussion that should also be part of this?
Yep. Why not disagree on principle?
Yes.
Say, look, this according to this formula, this, and the other, I disagree with because this
Because?
is the impact of it. But no, it's all about shouting matches, screaming at one another. You are not going to force us to vote. You are not going to make us follow your way. You're not going to ram this down our throat.
So you wonder, where did this get into the
If you want to
discussion?
kill us today. We are not going to be coerced.
That's a statement you make when you know very well no one is going to kill you. If you actually thought someone was going to kill you,
You wouldn't dare them.
you'd talk really differently.
You wouldn't dare them.
Again, who do you think the senators are addressing when they make these sensational statements? We do have a real issue. We do have an issue of understanding simple things like the government allocates 5 billion shillings to the counties so that they can be prepared to meet the COVID menace. Simple. We are even told how the money is dished out. Who gets what? We know. Then you are asked, are you ready? Yes, we are ready. Have you met the requirements that we set forth?
We've
Yes,
surpassed.
we have. In fact,
Surpassed.
we've gone beyond it. In fact, just a few of us, as in 21 are ready, but the other 26, 25 are not ready. But most of us are ready. Look at that amount, 21, but most of us, that's 21.
Right.
Then the president decides to do a little,
Fact finding.
yes, the fact finding is that 5. 5.
21 comes down all the way to 5. And we're still continuing this conversation. Let's take a break and see what's happening on the roads. 20 minutes to 10 o'clock. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Join the conversation 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Also, you can join the conversation on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Good morning.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay.
Traffic.
Just when we thought everything was all right, I guess not. This traffic jam on Langata Road at Nyayo Stadium is terrible. So it seems the cold weather has made it difficult for the police officers to lift their hands. And everything is in a bit of a mess this morning. And then when we thought it was all good on Thika Road, there's a terrible accident at Survey between a lorry and another vehicle. A lorry has lost control and the service lane... from the service lane to the main highway. So we have this accident inbound across the road, guys. So it's a mess right now. So it was already bumper to bumper traffic. Now absolute standstill. It's not happening until that accident is moved out of the way. So where we thought it was all good, unfortunately, it isn't. So we're looking at Langata Road and Thika Road right now. We're getting some problem spots. Mombasa Road did very, very well today. We don't have any issues there, as did other parts of the city. So we will be fine. Looking at other parts of the country, no traffic then having been recorded for this morning. So where if you're stuck, you're going to have to sit it out for now. Spice FM KE on Twitter to see what the rest of the day looks like.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
Join the
done right.
conversation
94.4.
12600 0719-012-600. Are we being distracted from something? It is all this standoff and back and forth in the Senate, the arrest of senators, them being taken all the way to their home counties, being released, and then top leaders of government coming out, top leaders in the country coming out to say, oh, no, this was the wrong thing to do. But they are speaking almost 30 hours after the arrests took place. What exactly is happening? Paul in Weyomererie. Paul, good morning.
Yeah, morning to you.
Weyomererie means jikaze.
Because yes,
Right.
yes.
Talk to
I'm
us.
following up on this discussion
Right.
keenly. And my take is, I think the government is trying to divert people's attention from the fact that the COVID money has been eaten. Guys have made away with chunks of money, and this is a discussion people have to be diverted. That is my take.
So being diverted from that fact that money has been stolen.
Yes, the donors' money and all of it meant for the COVID.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul. What do you think? 0719-012-600. Do you first of all agree that what's happening now is as a basic implementation of the dead cat strategy? Dead cutting, just placing a dead cat on the table so that everybody stops focusing on what else brought them to the table, but just start talking about there's a dead cat on this table. How did it end up on this table? Jimmy Kimani in Malindi. Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, too.
How are you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm fine, thank you. Just to go to the point. You see, there's one problem is that most of the people have forgotten the agenda of the Africa and the independence. The reason why we had independence. Sorry, I think my credit will go off. I'll just come later.
All right, Jimmy. 0719-012-600. As we wait for Jimmy to come back, what do you think? What is the distraction? What are we being distracted from? Actually, now that Paul speaks about it, there's a story that's right here on page 2 of the Standard. Treasury bailed the rich to buy posh vehicles as the poor skipped meals. Given an entire coverage here of, look, billions released to cushion Kenyans from pandemic have pampered the wealthy few at the expense of millions who are struggling to survive. And we have seen, this is quoting the data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Data from very many other quarters has come in to show that very many people are really suffering. People in their millions are at a point where they are unable to feed themselves. And the news starts imagining that these billions went into the pockets of some people who are supposed to have supplied aid to healthcare workers and all, and then they just didn't do it. They just took the money. Jimmy is back. Jimmy.
Yes, please.
Yes, you were saying, going to the point.
Yes, I'm going to the point. I'm saying that many people have forgotten the reason for independence. And the main reason, as the first Mjadala which we had before, it was about how Africa is going to unite and how we are going to be one. This is a dream that all the African leaders had in mind. When we got the independence, it was about Mau Mau. It was about Africa. It was about KANU, Kenya, Africa, whatever. It was all about Africa. And the main thing that has made us lose the direction is wealth. So when I come to this, you see those senators that were arrested. For me, I view it in a different way. These people, we can say that it was bad, they were done injustice. But always look, if it's a game being played, my friend, because I don't trust the Senate. I don't trust it. From my Giro issues and all I know about the Constitution, for me, I don't have trust on the Senate. So, these senators, it is good before we judge, we should look who is playing the game who.
Okay.
Or who can be used to play the game.
All right,
because we know
Jimmy.
clearly. Yes, people can be used to play games, as you said, they are being done this and that. So I don't trust everything that's going on.
So who's the puppet master? Who's the puppet and who's the puppet master?
The puppet master is the person that has forgotten the reason of leadership in Africa is to set up agendas that will unite Africa, not to set up things that wealth is taking on our eyes. Our forefathers never had the vision of the eyes of the wealth. They had the vision
Jimmy.
of the eyes of freedom and leadership.
Asante sana, Jimmy. Brian in Nakuru.
Yes, morning, guys.
Morning.
Yeah, the problem with Africa, it started like long time ago. Africa, we lost our identity. We are looking to the West for a solution while the solutions are still... we are looking to the West for a problem for a solution, so while our solutions are still here in our ground. So the other person cannot know the problems you are facing and what you are going up to look up to them. So you find Africa from system has been justified on ground. Even in the good book, the Holy Book, it says Jesus came to hide in Africa.
Yep.
God brought Jesus to hide. The Israelites were in Africa for 400 years. It was like it's something where a special thing is hidden in Africa that most of us don't know, that when it comes back, and most of the guys don't want to go with it. So it's just a mentality
Brian,
of slavery.
Nduh doesn't know that
brought up.
part where Jesus came to hide in Africa. You don't know that part?
Yeah, well, during when King Herod was killing the kids, they came to Africa. They
boys,
came to
yes.
So he went to Egypt.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian. Baba Waithera,
Oh, hi.
how are you?
Oh, me, I'm okay. And how is everyone there?
Fine, thank
We
you.
are well, thank you.
Oh, I'm happy. I'm happy to always wake up to your discussions. Now, there is this Mwalimandro who is asking the translation or the alternative of the proverb. Let me give you one in Kikuyu. Yeah?
Yes.
Hiti the hair go carry. Hiti is the hyena. And you know that what he wants to describe the hyena, and up to now I remember that he was comical and perfect. That means we take that when your mother kills the bull, it is going to be eaten by the hyena. Now, yeah. Now, when you also kill the goat, her goat, yeah, we also take it that it's going to be eaten by the same hyena. Okay. So it is like you, both of you, the wrong one and the wrong one are feeding the hyena. So don't give it for the carry means the second time, yeah.
So feed it once, and that's enough.
Just feed it once, yeah. And now look for the solution. Now now let me come to the discussion, yeah. I do not think that we are being distracted from anything.
Okay.
What somebody is trying to do, I remember mentioning the word pay them with pay them, yeah. Whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. It's my way, yeah. And I told you that I dreamt somebody uttering those words. I don't know who uttered them, but I dreamt, and my dream was when I went to my interpreter, I was told it was really uttered in Kenya. Okay.
Okay.
So somebody beats his chest and says, "It is either my way or you. It is the highway." Okay.
Okay.
And this is very bad because it is watering down our effort to bring democracy. You know, the sense of discard, let us discard, yeah? And it's only God who is going to help us, actually. It's only God who is going to help us. And even Satan, if he was in his place, yeah, there in hell, yeah, I think he gives the small devil some kind of freedom to discuss and tell him, okay, let us now go and disturb Eric. No, tomorrow we are going to disturb Mwalimadro, okay? Then the next day you can, but it does not mean that he is always going to have his way. Do you see?
So it's somebody who basically wants to ram it down our throats.
Definitely, and he wants to redefine dictatorship, okay?
So is this the only way? I mean, isn't there any other better strategy? Does this somebody not have better access to better tools?
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Eric, yeah? I'm happy that the kind of people that we now have, including you people, me, and others, yeah? There are some people who have developed patriotism, okay? And who use their own brain and reasoning to actually come to conclusions, okay?
Yep.
It is very hard to buy those people to coerce them. Do you see?
True. That's very true.
So, and, I have always told you that I do not believe in the idea of bribing somebody, okay? Like me, you cannot bribe me. Whether you are my brother, whether you can't, okay? I have to use my power of my reasoning power to come to my conclusions and my, to defend my stance and my arguments and my decisions, yeah?
So, we hear you. We hear you. Thank you very much.
Are you going to have a good day?
We are going to have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
You know, what is obviously not clear, if you simply look at the debate and depending on which divide you lean towards, what is presented in the public by us and by social media as being the heart of the matter, the easy thing is to lap it up and say, okay, this is what is really happening.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know our politics, you know our leaders, and you know what happens in a run-up to a national election, then you wouldn't take it as the only thing that's happening.
For sure, you can't, and I think that a lot of those who'd be involved in whatever this drama is are banking on the fact that previously Kenyans may have taken it like that. Oh, okay, it's just a deliberation in the Senate and nothing more than that. And I think they're banking on the thought that Kenyans will think in this manner. But I'm saying that it's important to think that there could be an alternate reality of what is really going on. Not with what you have in store, not with what is coming down in the next 18 months, not with what has happened over time with the change in leadership in several sectors of government. Not with that. You can't just take things at face value, unfortunately.
Would you say that, for instance, because this discussion on COVID, which in many ways has taken center stage simply because the monies involved and the monies that don't seem to have ended up there, and now we have this discussion in the Senate regarding the division of spoils, are we saying that the politicians that we knew prior to COVID have changed? Because if they have, then indeed, yes, we are discussing the matter of the division of spoils. But if they're the same people that we've had before and whose actions we have seen, forget what they say.
We're talking 2022.
Then no. 2022 is just one of the discussions. At the heart of any election system in this country and at the heart of any campaign is money. Money. Not just representing people, money. Money is at the heart of it.
But I also want to say that I strongly believe that very many of the people that we see in the National Assembly and in the Senate, and we've seen this before, are not really independent. They are controlled by a higher force, a higher authority. All right? So whenever we saw the kind of changes that the higher authorities decided we need to have a change in leadership in the National Assembly and the Senate, and it happened. Within 3 weeks, things had already taken place. There was a removal of a deputy speaker. There was an ascension of a new speaker. There was a removal of all the leadership of committees. All these things happened. And yet, those independent people in the House were the ones who were standing up to elect, to vote, following the orders of the higher-ups. Those higher-ups are the ones who are still running this show right now. This whole division of revenue and the formula in the Senate, it is not because of the independence of this so-called Team Kenya and the Young Turks.
They're involved in the conversation.
They have absolutely no control. They would not be able to stand up and tell us today that they cannot vote and they'll say no, and no one can tell them what to do. Absolutely, I don't believe it. Johnson Odero calling in from Kahawa West. Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you?
I'm good. Nduh, hi.
Hi.
And CT, good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I'm good, sir. Now, my contribution is...
Yes, go ahead.
What is happening in the Senate and the arrest and what have you that has happened over the last few days actually is just drama. But my view is because we have corruption which has taken root into our society. And from yesterday's discussion and even the previous day's discussion is that we need a change. And as City was saying, that change that is what we are trying to resist, which is the hardest thing because we don't want to move from point A to point B because of A, B, C, D. What I would say is that corruption, if you want to look at it from up down, then it's not going to work because we want a president who is corrupt-free.
Yep.
We want a senator who is corrupt-free. We want some government employees who are corrupt-free. But then you come to local manage, me and maybe some other guy somewhere in the city or in the entire nation.
Yep.
We have our small corruption traits that we brewed. Take, for example, the traffic. You see, when you're along Mombasa Road, you want to alight maybe somewhere. A matatu is going to stand where there's not designated stage. I'm going to drop because of my egocentric. I want to reach in office in time. I want to do ABCD in time.
Yep.
I'm going to break the traffic rules. I'm going to do ABCD. So you find we have a society which is comfortable with corruption at their lower level. This very same society is going to bring up leaders who have brooded corruption in their minute level.
Yep.
So when they reach up, you want them to change. They have mutated, they have formed opinion about corruption, they know how to
They're more
protect
lethal.
themselves, and they are more lethal.
Thank you.
So
Thank
the
you very
change
much,
is-
Johnson.
So my thing is, we came from down, we
Up.
go up, and it's not going to happen in 2022, 2027, 2032. It's going to take some time until this entire generation is comfortable to living without corruption, so that it becomes our moral way of life.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Johnson. Geoffrey in Mombasa.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning,
morning.
Geoffrey.
Well, I just want to make a quick comment. The other time we are discussing about deep state and other mechanisms that work for us in this country. Now, at least we have answers on this. That's why we are experiencing all these circus in the Senate, because somebody must direct what is supposed to take place there. Because it's not right. Counties have been getting funds. If you are to adopt a new formula, at least the previous formula should be working until that such a time you come to an agreement. Why must it happen to wait until that such a time when Senate have to agree?
Yep,
That's
true.
when counties should get the money.
That's true.
A system that is previously working must be there. Then you adapt a new one. Then once it's agreed upon, you can just implement it immediately
For
once
continuity.
the financial year is over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Geoffrey. And we're coming to the end of the show. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, coming up to 10 o'clock. Just to remind you, kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. If you'd like to know anything about the operations with the Kenya Ports Authority, just go there, kpa.co.ke/Captain Cargo. You'll find all the information. In coming days, we'll track CT's consignment of generators from the UK all the way to Mombasa. In fact, wherever you want it to go. So,
Mombasa.
all right.
Okay.
Today's proverb, as we conclude.
Because a man has injured your goat, do not go out and kill his bull.
Sawa. Hiyo tumesikia. Thank you very much for tuning in. Nduh, say goodbye.
Goodbye, have a good day, and we keep talking, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
What time does Monique come?
Monique comes in at 3 on the Spice Drive till 7 o'clock, and then when she's done, the adults in the room come in. That's Barbara and Emmanuel and Eric.
And that's from 7 to 10.
Till 10 o'clock, yes.
Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Signing off, it's CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Eric Latiff. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.
Spice up your life